I didn't think there were this many people here.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw.
All right, it's 4 o'clock, and we're going to call the Planning and Zoning August 4th meeting to order. You have people sitting outside, so we're going to have to kind of make sure they hear everything. And when we call speakers up, it may take them a second to come in. I'm talking as loud as I can. We're privileged to have Councilwoman Brenda Hughes here with us today in the back to make sure that what we do is right. So thank you for being here. Our first item on the agenda for today is approval of the minutes from the July 7th meeting and from the July 28th workshop and from the July 28th meeting. So we just
all together or individually?
did it.
Your pleasure.
Has everyone taken a look at what we have on those? I looked at them. I felt like they were pretty accurate. So I would entertain a motion to approve all three.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second. Okay, so we have a motion to approve and second. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, then we're gonna move on to item 2A. Drew?
2A is the final plat for lots 136, 137, 138, 139, 140, 141, 142, and 143 of the Meridian subdivision. You can see the upper left is current platted as 4 lots. They are replatting those into 6 lots, one of which being a green belt maintained by the HOA. And staff recommends approval as drawn.
Speaker that just dropped in.
So this is not a public hearing, so.
I'll take it back.
You mean,
I'll take it. Sorry.
is it 2A?
No.
No, it's for,
My
sorry,
bad.
it's for the next one.
Sorry.
So we have no one to speak on this issue, commissioners. Any questions or comments on this final plat action?
Would that work out to about 4,300 square foot a lot? We somehow restricted what can be put there?
No, they're going larger lots. They're all over a tenth of an acre, about 0.13 acres.
Oh, okay. So it's 5K.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they went larger. It is an existing subdivision,
Right.
as you can see on the aerial. Streets are built, water and sewer, ready to go. So they're just making larger lots actually instead of smaller.
If there are no questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to approve the final plat.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. So the final plat approval for Meridian is. So now we're going to move on to item 3A, which does require a public hearing. And before we get into the public hearing, you want to take us through this, Drew?
A resolution to allow a conditional use permit for a short-term rental, lots 23, 24, 25, and 26 of Block 3 River Hill Townhomes 8 Edition, more commonly known as 510 Preston Trail Loop. With that, I'll actually turn it over to the applicant first and let
Okay.
them talk about it.
Do I get my husband as well?
That's up to you. You can bring him in if you'd like.
He's 50%.
Come on, we know he's only 49%.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us to speak. I am Lisa McGehee. This is my husband, Rod McGehee. We've owned that property since 2019. It's approximately 1.3 acres. Obviously, it's 4 lots put together. We've enjoyed that property very much. We also own 4 other homes that are long-term rentals to us, so we have quite a bit of experience with rentals. Being 8 years in an experienced real estate broker, I also too have a lot of opinions about short-term rentals, just like everybody else does. But we're Our plan with this is to only take our casita, which is a 600 square foot dwelling that's adjoined by our 4-car garage, and it's approximately 60 feet from the beginning curb of the street. You are basically got a 30-foot buffer of grass plus another 30 foot of concrete. A third of our property is basically driveway as well. So there's quite a bit of parking. We've also started to, and hopefully complete our construction on our wall that we've started almost a year ago, I would say. That encompasses the entire perimeter from the west and east boundary line going all the way straight across. So there's actually a very nice private wall, which is 2-foot stucco and wrought iron panel. So we have a very private setting. I've never in our wildest dreams that we would come to this point to ask permission to do this, but our plan with this, gentlemen, is to allow space for professionals, because I do a lot of real estate business, and I see a lot of folks, and especially like the hospital, people are coming with new jobs, recruitment from the hospital and other professionals, that we would entertain no less than 1 week to 2 weeks stay up to 90 days. So that's why we're requesting a conditional use permit, because we're under that 1 month term. And, another thing I'd like to add is, besides our husband, our 6-year-old son, and we have a lot of cats, but we all live in the large house. We would never, ever rent that, use that as short-term whatsoever. We have a lot of nice things in that, and that is our private dwelling. So we're only talking about the little casita, which is 600 square feet. We would only do a maximum occupancy of 4. And it comes with a bedroom, a bath, a living room, and a kitchen. And that's
So
it.
it's one bedroom?
It is. There's a living room, which we plan to do a pull-out, if in case
Correct.
they have extra kids or whatever, so.
Okay, so you guys live there full-time, you would
Yes.
be managing it yourself?
Oh, yes, absolutely. No, I don't agree with property management companies, that they really tend to mess things up sometimes, and I don't trust them on that. I would not allow that.
So we appreciate it. We're gonna open up the public hearing and hear what everyone has to
Sure.
say, and then we'll close the public hearing and get back to whatever decision we need to make. So, do you need to say anything, Drew?
The conditions proposed are basically the standard conditions that we would allow for, or that we propose for a short-term rental. The guest notification requirement, local contact, they are required to pay their occupancy taxes, signage, off-street parking.
They can't hear you, Drew, so
sorry.
somehow we need to,
The standard conditions would be the guest notification requirement, local contact, occupancy taxes are required to be paid. Any signage on the property with its limitations, minimum off-street parking, the maximum occupancy, which they exceed on their, or are lower than, and standard conditions.
You said minimal off-street parking? We couldn't hear you.
Yes, minimum off-street parking required, 1 per bedroom. As you can see from the aerial photo, they've got a very large driveway that exceeds that.
Off-street, like not into the property, but off onto the street, is that what you're saying?
Sorry.
Is correct?
Yes,
we'll get into the public hearing, ma'am, and then you can ask your
We couldn't
question.
hear him.
Okay,
so
I got you. We
Can't ask
understand.
if we can't hear.
Sure. Before we get into the public hearing, my question is, the short-term rental, the conditional use permit for a short-term rental, it's basically based on the property, not just the casita, correct?
that's
So if
correct.
it's granted, theoretically, it could be, the whole property could be used as a short-term rental? Or can we put conditions on that?
You could put a condition on that to limit it to the casita, yes.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm gonna open up the public hearing on this at 4:09, and John Fleckenstein II. John Fleckenstein II.
All right. John, sorry.
Hello. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to kind of speak about this.
This,
Tell us
this-
who you are first, John.
oh, sorry, John Fleckenstein II. I live at 2415 Brookdale Lane. So I'm about 200 yards away from this residence. And it's in my neighborhood. I walk by the house frequently. Personally, I'm in support of this, and I would be in support for, even furtherance of not having to condition just to the casita for, for the entire premises of the purpose of the property. I personally don't know either one of the folks that are doing this, but I think that it makes a lot of sense to give more of the property owners their own freedom to do the different things that they want to do with it. I mean, James Avery started a jewelry business out of his garage that now I'm sure that he'd have to apply for a permit for. But I just think that not everyone lives at their house 100% of the year. And given that I'm in that same neighborhood, I travel frequently to study different economies around the world, to visit with people. I think that it should be, property owners should be given more latitude in order to use their property for whatever purposes that they deem appropriate, so long as it doesn't inhibit upon their neighbors and otherwise. So I guess just in short, I would say that I'm in support of this project, even though that it's something that the people that I don't know, it's in my own neighborhood, and that's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Janice Bowen? Janice Bowen? She passes. I also have on this same card Terry Cody. No, ma'am, over here.
Over here.
Just gonna go stand over there.
Hi, I'm Terry Cody. I am currently an Airbnb owner, not in the River Hill neighborhood, even though I own 3 properties in River Hill. I have had an Airbnb for the past 3 years. I have applied for a permit because I got to get myself legal. I would like to say that, and my Airbnb is very much like theirs. It is a tiny guest house off the side of my house with its own driveway, plenty of parking, and most of my neighbors in my neighborhood in Kerrville don't even know it exists. The few neighbors that do know it exists have used it to put their extended family in during holidays. As a River Hill property owner, I own several properties which were designed to be short-term rentals in the first place. So this is not something new and not known to River Hill. Those properties, there's several properties in River Hill that are already short-term rentals and were built and designed back in the 70s to be short-term rentals. So I just wanted to do my shout out and say, go for it. I think it's great.
Thank you, ma'am. Jerry Stroud.
Thank you for letting me speak. I live on Preston Trail. When I bought my home, I signed papers for a residential area. Nothing about a business. I didn't buy in a business. I don't want to be in a business. That's just the way I see it. I think this is a start of a downhill spiral. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Rex Borland. Rex Borland.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Rex Boyland. I live at 507 Preston Trail Loop, directly across from the property for which a conditional use permit is requested. Mary D. Reinhardt, my next door neighbor at 503 Preston Trail Loop, submitted an opposition email to the Planning and Zoning Department that was not included in your packet. Today, I will share her email in a handout to you after my remarks. The agenda bill speaks to the property having 2 bedrooms. Though the McGeehees may intend only to rent the garage converted to a 2-bedroom casita, their 5-bedroom home may be used as an STR while they own or any subsequent owner owns the property. Item F of your proposed conditions to the CUP allow this with a maximum occupancy of 10. The McGeehees have been good neighbors to me and should be able to use their property as they see fit. I'm all in favor of the important rights of property owners to do as they please with their property, so long as the exercise of those rights do not negatively impact the rights of any other property owners. As such, businesses are not allowed to operate out of single-family residences, neither should the business of a short-term rental. There's an item further down your agenda today to consider an amendment to the zoning ordinance for STRs. I understand R1s and R2s, R2 zoning districts will be excluded from STRs by right or permit. The prudent thing would be to table action today on this present request until action on the ordinance is taken by City Council. I spoke with 8 of the 13 property owners within 200 feet of the subject property, and including myself, 7 are opposed, 1 in favor, and 1 undecided. Please decline approval as the majority of those most directly impacted are in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's all the speakers I have signed up to speak. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak before we close the public hearing? Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Milton Gabriel, and I live in River Hill, a residential community, and I emphasize residential. It's a very nice community, clean, safe, and we have a homeowners association that goes out of their way to keep it that way. But however, this proposal that's before you, I'm vehemently against it. I bought a home because I like the area, and I don't want to wake up some morning and see a McDonald's in the middle of a golf course. This precedent, if it's approved, would just open the door for other things. It's like the camel getting his nose in the tent. For long he's in it and nibble. It goes on. The precedent's set, and it'll be bad for the community and the homeowners association. I hope up till now it's been real good to keep it that way. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
And I'm too short. My name is Flora McClung, and I'm a River Hill property owner and also a very good friend of Lisa and Rod McGeehee's. They welcomed us with open arms when we first moved there 4 years ago. I am against the casita being a short-term rental, and my reasoning for that is, just like the rest of the folks, I moved to River Hill as a resident. We lived in Lakeway. They tried to do the same thing in Lakeway with short-term rentals because of the lake. And that got voted down after they did try it for a little while. It became a little bit too crazy. I do know these guys, and I know they won't keep it that way, that they'll be very strict about it. However, it does open the door for other folks to come in who may not be as conscious as Lisa and Rod are. And that's the point. It's the other folks that may come in and not have the commitment to keeping their property clean and up to date, and making sure their tenants that stay there are, good, and they're going to make sure they take care of everybody else around them. These guys will, but other people won't, and that's why I'm against that.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing at 4:19. Uh-oh.
My name's Jeff Conrad. I happen to be Lisa's dad. Full disclosure to be considered. I wasn't planning to talk tonight, but listening to the comments, I felt it appropriate that everyone understand the rights, the property owner's rights, which I think leans toward approval. probably approval with reasonable restrictions. But, you know, you need to look at the difference between short-term rental. What is that? 30 days, 90 days, a long weekend versus long-term rental, which could be anywhere from 6 months to years. My point is the difference between the two is more of a time consideration than not. And I'm a realtor like my daughter, and we have a little experience in our family with short-term rental. And quite frankly, typically, short-term rental people are affluent, clean, and typically obliged to have the facility completely cleaned when they leave. Versus a lot of long-term rental, depending on where it might be and so forth and so on. That's typically where you have the problem with loud noise and other distractions which are conflicting with the peace of the neighborhood. So, all said and done, short-term rental is a consideration. It's become a worldwide multi-billion-dollar business. And I think the secret is to establish regulation, reasonable regulation, so that everybody can do as they feel is appropriate for them, with the approval, of course, stated in the regulations. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'm gonna close the public hearing, 4:22. We'll see if anyone has any comments. We'll go forward. Kevin, we'll start with you. You have any comments or questions for the owners?
I don't think I do on this one.
Yep.
I know River Hill, and I know there are short-term rentals in River Hill, and what the McGahees are talking about doing. I know the property. I've seen it. I've watched it go up for sale. I've seen what y'all have done to the property since y'all got it. They are building the fence around it. I mean, that's obvious if you drove by and looked at it before this hearing. So it's
We'll be dead before we enjoy it.
so it's I don't. Other than those comments, I don't have any questions for the owners.
Cliff? Good. David, comments?
I guess the only comment I have is conditional applied to the casino.
Rob?
I think with the size of it, the lot, the fence going around it, there being there on the premises, and maybe doing a conditional part for just a casino, I don't see why not. It has access to the river trail with Brookdale and to the golf facilities. That's all I have.
Comments?
Yeah, I like that the applicants are living on site, that they're going to be there if we do approve this, that they'll be overseeing everything. The location of the casita away from the street, I think, is a factor. Also, just considering that directly across the street you have what looks like a vacant lot. I drove by there yesterday or the day before. Lot adjacent to the property is also vacant, and then on the other side as well as that little maintenance workshop or whatever for River Hill. So I think the location is good. And yeah, like what's been echoed previously, I think we look at, if we're approving it, put it to the casita only. And that would also help alleviate any sort of traffic concerns, because at that point, Drew, you'd have what, 2 cars that would be allowed?
That's correct.
Okay. That's all.
Question, I have a question for you, Drew. I know that we're looking at the future qualifications for the STRs. We're also looking at an annual or a semi-annual licensing and inspection and renewal.
That's correct.
So my question is, everyone that has a short-term rental that is already established, will they be required to have licenses to apply and get a license and have these annual inspections or semi-annual inspections going forward, or will they not?
That is the proposal going through a short-term rental license. All existing grandfathered or CUP would be required to obtain that license.
Okay. So, I mean, my comments are that the questions were brought up about licensing and about, you know, we don't have the luxury to table something just because there's going to be some new rules in the future. We just can't do that. That's just, we have to operate with what we have. Licensing will be a big factor. This already, I guess, technically speaking, it can be used as a long-term rental, which is beyond 30 days. So it could be, you know, there could be long-term rental, it could be short-term rental. My comment is, since January, I've looked, we've had so many applications for these conditional use permits for short-term rentals, and I would say, of all the properties that we've looked at, this is the most appropriate candidate for a short-term rental that I've looked at since I've been on P&Z. And I know that everyone is not going to agree, and I know the neighbors could be upset about this. I think that limiting it to the casita, excluding the house, if we can't put that condition on there, so no matter who, if they sell this in the future, who buys it, the short-term rental will be limited only to the casita. It's a gated, walled community. It has all the parking inside. You know, based on what we've done in the past, I can't find a reason to turn this thing down. I really can't. That's my opinion. I think it fits the, you know.
We want a long-term rental to show more traffic because you have people there 24/7 versus just on the weekends.
No question about it. I mean, I really don't think that this is going to be a traffic issue. And again, they can rent it. They can rent it for 31 days right now.
Yeah.
You know, they have the ability to do it. So, all that being said, I would entertain a motion on the request for a conditional use permit for the short-term rental.
I'll make the motion with the condition to the casita.
Okay, we have a motion to limit it to the casita only.
I'll second.
And we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, this motion approves. So we'll move on to C. No, 3B, I'm sorry, 3B. Go ahead, Drew.
Maybe. There we go.
Hold on a second. Let's let everyone that's going to leave.
Chairman, I think we'll have a few coming in too.
Yeah, I
So
think let's let them come in before we. You guys are being very good over there on that side of the room.
I'm joking.
I didn't hear anybody say just wait. So.
How about that one? There's one here. There's somebody sitting there. Okay, could you speak down so that we can try to get, most of these people want in. Oh, she wants to get that. Let me see right here. Three right here. Four. Okay, back there.
There's one.
You know, we can make a little revenue if we sold tickets.
It's not gonna pay the cost, Mike.
All right, we're gonna move on to 3B, an ordinance to change zoning from R3 multifamily residential to PI group.
You got it, public and institutional on 7.1 acres out of the Wallace Survey, number 113, abstract 347, more commonly known as 365 Clearwater Paseo Path. This is, again, currently zoned R3. And we are requesting, the city is the applicant on this. This is the location of the public safety facility. So, I guess first, public and institutional uses are allowed in any zoning district. However, we did carve out a specific district to better identify them on the zoning map where those major locations are, such as K-Pub across the street, Shriner University, and so on. So we wanted to go ahead and go through the process of changing the zoning to match that for full transparency to the public and those looking at the map in the future. This is a minor change to the future land use plan. I know we talked about that a little bit in our workshop last week. The future land use plan identified this entire area, as you can see to the west, as transitional residential. So that's single family up to multifamily. Across the street, you have professional services, which would be K-Pub and Sheriff's Office. Beyond that, you can see you have Shriner University as public and institutional use. Excuse me. So with that minor change to the future land use plan, this request is consistent with the balance of the comprehensive plan and those goals and policies within. It has frontage on 2 local streets, Clearwater Paseo and Rio Monte, for that property to have good access in 2 locations. Of course, then you can go to Meadowview or out Clearwater Paseo to get to Memorial Drive. Staff recommends the approval of the case. Be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
I do have no one signed up to speak. I'm gonna open the public hearing at 4:32. I have no one signed up to speak. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this issue? I did notice that there was one opposed. I guess would you receive a letter, an email from?
Yes.
And that person is not here. So I guess at this point, what I'll do is close the public hearing at 4:32. Open it up for discussion with the commissioners. Questions, concerns, issues? All right, if there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve the change in zoning on this property.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Motion to approve is second. All in favor? Raise your hand. So the ordinance 3B passes. We will move on to 3C.
3C is an ordinance to change the zoning from C2 light commercial to a planned development district on lot 3R and 4R, block 1, Langtree edition, more commonly known as 598 Yorktown Boulevard. And with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Is the applicant here?
Are you the applicant?
Yep.
If you go, microphone right there.
Ready. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Introduce yourself. Who are you?
Vernon Young, and I'm here for this Yorktown property.
Okay.
We have spent a lot of time thinking about how to proceed, and we're using a planned unit development. If you look at it, you'll see coming from the only issue that we had was coming through that subdivision. We needed access for the fire department. And so there was an easement there that was held by, I think, the son of the developer of the subdivision next door. And so we agreed that the only purpose for it was for the fire department, so that there wouldn't be traffic on it in any event. So there'll be a knockout gate there for the fire department if they need it, because they need two ways in and out.
Okay.
What we're doing is planned for two 4-story hotels, and one is by Marriott. It's a Town Place Suites, extended stay, roughly 90 rooms. I don't remember exact the number, but it's less than 100. On one side, which would be over on the right side, if you're looking at it from Yorktown, and over on the left side would be another one, and it's by IHG, which is the same company as Holiday Inn, and it's a new product, and it's called Allowable Suites, and it's their answer. It's a kind of either a daily or short term, and they are the IHG is the company, and they are the franchisor. So we have a franchise. It's also in the range of 90 keys. We have a professional management company in Bernie that will be managing the properties. And what we're here today to do is we've made plans, by the way. Our civil engineer couldn't be here today. Well, here we are. Thank you. The one nearest 16 is the Town Place Suites, which is Marriott, and that's extended stay. And the other one is the Allowable Suites by HG. And so you will see that we have detention down in the front on Yorktown to take care of the drainage. We will also have a detention pond down, if you look at the bottom right, all that land back there is ours as well. And we're holding that for not sure what, but right now there will be detention pond over there. So this shows you the parking. It shows you how you can get around, and the landscaping will be down the middle, and it's going to, each one will, neither one have anything other than breakfast in the morning. They're considered not a full service. So that's it. As most of you know, there haven't been any new hotels here for 20 years, and we feel real confident that these will be successful, and it's a perfect place for it, in that everything along 16 is pretty much the same thing. So that's it.
Thank you very much. We'll open the public hearing, and I have a couple of speakers, 2 or 3 speakers here, and then if we have any questions,
Certainly.
we'll get you guys to. So I'm going to open the public hearing at.
Chairman, can I go ahead and go through staff
Yeah, go
report
ahead.
first? Again, the request is for a planned development district. This property is part of the Catalyst area, Catalyst area number 7, which is described as the kind of bridge between I-10 and downtown, a commercial corridor along Highway 16. Focusing on one of the obviously busiest thoroughfares, the allowable place types are transitional residential, community, and regional commercial. All 3 place types are appropriate, but special attention to be paid to transition areas existing and abutting residential neighborhoods. Property is currently zoned C2. Property to the north is zoned R1. Property to the south or towards 16 is zoned C2 also. To the north, up 16 is C3, and then of course across Yorktown Boulevard is PI for the stadium. The Planned Development District is a zoning category that allows for unique and innovative land use and design techniques. And the PD allows the applicant to create combination of uses or structures, utilize flexible design techniques that take into account the adjacent properties and needs for future occupants, mitigate the impacts of new construction on traffic, environmental, and public facilities, protect existing natural assets such as the Guadalupe River and hill country views, promote the efficient use of land and public facilities and services, or further the vision of the comprehensive plan. The Planned Development District is intended to ensure compliance with good zoning practices while allowing specific desirable departures from the strict provisions of the current zoning classifications. It is not intended to circumvent the standard requirements in the zoning code. Property is approximately 6 acres with 2 hotels, and the C3 would be the standard zoning for a hotel. The planned development district is to allow the 4-story building with a setback of 51 foot 6 inches from the residential property line. The standard C3 setback would require 100 feet on that northern property line. So you can see here, this is the closest point to the structure, to the residentially zoned area. This is 51.5 feet from the property line to the structure. If this were standard C3 zoning to allow the hotel, it would be required up 100 feet at that 45-foot height. So one of the questions for the commission to consider, is this a planned development district to provide kind of the unique desirable departures from the standard zoning, or just to change that setback? Staff recommends a few conditions based on similar planned development districts throughout town, and they're in your backup, of course. But permitted uses would be the hotel and accessory uses to be permitted within the PD. They would be tied to the concept plan that you have before you. The access to Spike Drive shall be for emergency access only and shall be gated with fire department approved mechanism and or locks. So that's the residential street that he mentioned coming out into the neighborhood. That access point would be required by fire code, but we're recommending it be limited to emergency access only. All outdoor lighting shall be full cutoff design and shall be located and shielded and aimed in such a manner to not allow light directly on the adjacent roadways or properties. Uplighting is prohibited. Parking shall be subject to the applicable sections of the zoning code. It must meet minimum parking. Parking lot and travel lane surface shall be paved in asphalt or concrete. Landscaping shall be installed in accordance with the plant materials identified in the Kerrville area, or recommended plants for the Kerrville area. All landscaping shall be maintained in a healthy growing condition. Screening shall be required as per the C3 zoning district screening section 60-51C6. So adjacent to residential areas, there's a minimum of 6-foot solid screening fence required. Trash collection bins and dumpsters shall be equipped with lids and screened with a gate and opaque screen on one side and finished to look like the adjacent buildings. And outside storage and display of any kind, it shall be prohibited. With that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Let's do the public hearing and then, so we'll open the public hearing at 4:43. And I have, my first speaker is Mr. Lopez. Mr. Lopez.
Okay, I've never been to one of these hearings ever. And
Well, welcome.
This is something that's really
What is your
important.
name? You want
Herberto Lopez.
Okay, thank you.
And okay, sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. I don't really do this kind of stuff.
No one's gonna bite you.
Okay, so I bought my house in 2009 when I was deployed, and I just found out about all this. One of the neighbors sent out flyers, and I appreciate that they took the time to send those out. Now, I've lived there for years, and I'm okay with the school, because it's been there forever, and noise and everything. And I understand that they're the city of Kerrville, when it comes to revenue. It's a good opportunity to bring jobs and stuff, and I understand that and I recognize that. But in my opinion, I'm strongly against it because yeah, you could put fences, you could put all this stuff, but in the end, you wake up and you're going to be able to see these 2 4-story buildings that they're going to be putting up, and that's not something why I bought the property to wake up every morning and to be seeing this. So to me, it's kind of an eyesore. So that's what I got against this. And again, I've never come to these kind of things, and I've never really been outspoken. But this is something that really concerns me because it's not just for the little bit that I have. It took a lot of time and effort to be able to even buy that property, and so now we're having to deal with 2 4-story buildings. Which I mean, I understand they explained that was the best location, but you also have different locations throughout Kerrville that I understand that you could put these 2 hotels. So that really that's my biggest my biggest thing about this whole deal. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
David Cox.
I'm David Cox. I'll pull this off for now. My wife and I have been living in the same house over there now for 39 years. It's our home, and for 14 years ago, we bought the house next to us as a rental for my retirement there. And it's income property for us, of course, but it's for our retirement. And also to keep it quiet for my wife. She's been sick for 22 years. She's had her stomach removed, and she's on TPN and food in her side also, has to go through a tube. And I bought it so we'd have a quiet retirement for our later years. And it's later now, I'm 75, so. She's been ill for 22 of those years so far. And at the time we bought that house, we checked and everything. And even that property was a bird sanctuary, or at least that's what it said when we came down and checked on it. C2 zoning was put on this property for a reason, and nobody seems to think about that. But this hotel goes in. All we're going to see in a 4-story motel is the back sides of the buildings or the front sides, whatever. And that's just not what we want to have to look at all the time. No one wants to live close to a 4-story hotel. And I know very well that there'll be dumpsters slamming. It's just that way, I've been around motels before. Dumpsters slamming, just noise all the time, cars coming in and out, all hours of the night. A higher increase in the number of cars coming through. It's going to change it for everyone there, and we all know it. And it'll all be changed not for the betterment. C2 zoning was put here for a reason. That was to protect the people living behind it. And now you want to change it. We bought it with C2 zoning, so we expected it to be that way. The landowner knew for years, I'm sure, that it was C2 zone, but went ahead anyway. Wanted to build there. We're just as important as anybody else, or should be. So we should be considered in this, not just for the money for the town we'll get out of it and everything. This town's growing so fast now, it's not, I don't know why. Everybody has to think money all the time. Just live a while. But that's, I don't know, my parents and my wife's parents lived and died here and are buried here. And when this happens, I imagine we'll just sell out and go somewhere else. And I still don't understand why, when it's zone C2, that we just supposed to turn our heads and say, or we might as well just turn our heads and say we give up. I don't give up that easy though.
Thank you, sir. Denise Lemillier.
Hi, Denise Lemillier. Thank you for listening to me today. I have to say, first of all, I own the property at 500 Yorktown. I have Lemillier's RV truck and equipment. And when we were contemplating building our shop, we had to come to planning and zoning and present plans. And some of the requests that were made from us for this building was we had to have a buffer between us and the houses that were going to be behind us. I guess that is Spike and Antler over there. And so instead of us being able to utilize that whole backside of our property, we have a rather large buffer between us and them. The other thing that had to happen is that we had to, our sign could only be a certain height, and we couldn't have a sign that was lit at night. So on the front of our building, there's no, on the very front of our building, it just has our name. There's no light on our name or anything like that because we abided by that request. We had to put in ADA compliant sidewalk that met certain requirements, and we had to have a detention pond that basically took one whole corner of our property away from us to put this in. And so that being said, I am pro-business. I believe in this town, we have not had a hotel of any sort in any length or period of time. However, I do not know if this is the area that this hotel needs to be. Can you show a picture of that where they showed the plan of what they were going to build right there? Where you see that on the front, on the Yorktown side, well, on that side, I own that 1.5 acres. So I own the whole 3 acres at the corner. I own that 1.5 acres. They could have come and talked to me. I might have talked to them about something. But on this side, you see where the drainage is, or not drainage, it's going to be the fire lane or whatever. There's a business right there that is also a home, a residential home, and they operate a business, and it's zone C2. I believe that they fall under that. I couldn't have my parking right butt up to the people on the housing behind me. You're going to have parking that is going to be butt up right next to these people's fence. That's their home. It may be a business as well, but it is also their home. The other thing that you're going to have is you're going to have a four-story hotel where people can actually be looking into the kitchen and watching their little kids play in the backyard of this home. Will they always own this home? I don't know. I talked to one of the other homeowners that lives at the corner of the street. He's got his house, up for sale, and he plans on moving. He's worried about the safety and security of the neighborhood. We already have a transient type home, if you will, where people that are rehabbing from things walk up and down our street. We've had people come through our yard that's a fenced yard with cameras and come over our fence. So those kind of things do happen. I'm not saying that would happen in this situation, but that was one of his concerns. I'm definitely pro-business. I believe that, it's something that we certainly need to consider. But there are some things that I would suggest, and one of them would be going back and rethinking the plan. Move this back away from this home and move it back. You can have it offset a little bit and still be functional for what you want it to do. Maybe consideration for the people on the street, the housing where it comes out. Maybe change your fire lane where that would be more of your parking lot versus this house here. I mean, it'd be good for my business to have a hotel right there. I'm a AAA repair shop. So when somebody's broken down on the highway, I get their vehicle towed to my shop. It would be ideal to have a place to say, oh, you can go stay at this hotel right there. But on the flip side, it wouldn't be in the best interest of my neighbors. And I try to be a good neighbor. And so I would ask you to just carefully consider, again, the way the plan is presented right now, the requirements of not changing that from 100 to 45. I think that would be detrimental to the neighborhood. And also consider moving this hotel that's directly behind the Brzezinski's house, move it back where that 4-story hotel is not looking right into their backyard with parking right behind their gate, or right behind their fence. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. We have Michelle Brzezinski.
May I allow my husband to go first?
You sure can.
We have this plan.
No plan, okay.
Hi, I'm Brian Brzezinski. I'm the owner of 600 Yorktown. We own and operate 3 businesses out of this property with me and my wife too. We rent space with 4 other business owners in our office building. My primary business is Synergy Release Method, or SRM. It is an alternative therapeutic service and a rehabilitative and preventative in nature. It's rehabilitative and preventative in nature. We've been in business over 20 years and have owned this property on Yorktown for 10 years, almost 10 years. The business owners who rent space from us are other therapeutic services, such as massage therapists. About 70% of my clients travel to see us from out of town. So to our office, we have a secondary structure that serves as a bed and breakfast. Select clients may have this opportunity to stay included into their fee. We are very selective when we give this opportunity to clients, as the Yorktown Bed and Breakfast also serves as my family primary full-time residence, complete with a residential fire sprinkler permit, the required code for this use. We are asking the Planning Commission to deny the planned development district and keep the current and appropriate C2 light commercial zoning of the lot surrounding us at 598 Yorktown. Any structure higher than 2-story building so close to our primary residence would be certainly a loss of privacy. The planning upper story of these hotels have the ability to view right into our backyard, our home, especially given the well-known heel of that neighborhood, where just a 2nd-story structure uphill has a higher sight line than a normal 2nd-story building on equal footing. On the northeast side of our property, there were hotel plans the hotel plans are showing 12 parking spaces on their side of our shared property line. These parking spaces are but a few yards away from my children's bedroom and bathroom windows. Headlights, parking lot lights, and noises from late night arrivals surely jeopardize the safety and security our children are currently blessed to have in their beds at night. This is my wife, Michelle.
As Brian stated, this is our full-time residence as well as our business. We homeschool our 2 children here. We have loved the nature and location of this neighborhood, and doing life and business as a family there. We believe that the current C2 zoning there is the appropriate zoning already long established by the Zoning Commission. It respects the adjacent residential zones and the longtime residents and owners in the neighborhood. It also helps to keep the volume of public access near and around our properties to a minimum, and during reasonable business hours. However, planned development zoning that permits businesses like hotels allow for potentially huge safety issues and noise concerns given the immense volume of public traffic of all sorts. Arrivals of unknown guests at any hour of the night, large bus loads of guests at any hour of the night, multiple dumpsters, pool noise, etc., which would be happening 24 hours a day around our home. We respect Mr. Vernon's rights to build as fellow CT commercial property owners, and we intend to pursue good business working relationships with our intimate neighbors. We do ask the planning commissioners to take into consideration the nature of our business as a peaceful, tranquil atmosphere where clients have come to get help to heal their bodies, as well as it being our peaceful, tranquil home. Brian has already addressed the many parking spaces facing our children's bedrooms. We are also concerned with the planned fire lane on the southeast side of the property, which is between us and the strip mall alleyway, which runs exactly parallel to our residential driveway. We would have to ask that the fire lane have also disgated emergency access, so the volume of public traffic that these hotels would generate 24 hours a day isn't passing right along the side of our residential driveway, our residential garage, my children's swing set, and the yard where we and our pets run and play outdoors.
Sorry.
It's okay. So that's the bottom fire lane, the strip right there at the bottom. Lastly, the shared commercial line on the northwest side of our property, where the main entry drive for the two hotels off of Yorktown, that is only 15 feet away from another one of our residential bedroom windows, 4 office windows, and 2 of our air conditioning units are within those 15 feet, even closer to that main drive. That side of our office also specifically serves our massage therapy clients. The lack of fencing and landscaping buffers there on these hotel plans is yet again a major issue for us. We do appreciate the planning commissioner's wisdom and consideration regarding our concerns as residents here. And we are asking that you deny the planned zoning development at 598 Yorktown. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I have no other speakers signed up to speak on this. Bruce?
Go first.
Can who go first? Okay.
On the other side.
Oh, I can. All right. I'm doing this on the spur of the moment.
You want to step up to the microphone, ma'am?
My name is Laura Grace Hampton, and I'm a resident of Kerrville. And I'm not even here about this particular case, but the young man, Umberto, who was the first one to speak, was very intimidated being in this room with everyone. And he talked to me some. And his home, he did not mention it, but his home is right back here with these other people that are complaining about losing all of their privacy. His home apparently will end up being that you'll be driving into his driveway. I mean, he said it wasn't going to be impossible, and I didn't get the details from him, but I felt so sorry for him. And with these speakers voicing the same concerns, I wanted to mention that he needs to be in that category with them. He just couldn't speak for himself.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Is there someone else? Yes, sir. Mr. Williams. How you doing, sir?
Good, thank you. I have no skin in this game. I'm just watching, but I have a lot of background in land use compatibility. Done a lot of it, probably over 1,000 cases. And this is what this is all about. And I'm not going to raise any new points because the points have been raised. I just want to package them. Is that when you come in and you've got a significant potential for land use impacts, you've got to do the work. I see line of sight issues here. I see big time noise issues here. And I just see a lot of other potential impacts. People have talked about them. That work's got to be done before you guys can do anything. And when I look at this thing, I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think 2 hotels on that little bit of property is giving rise to a lot of these issues that a lot of you people have. So I'd say either say no or make them do the work. Because the work hadn't been done. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Strachey.
Bruce Drakey, 615 Earl Garrett. I echo the last speaker. The packet doesn't include the ordinance. We don't know what land uses are going to be included in the PDD. We don't know the total height of the building. We're cutting the distance more than half away from extending over a two-story building. We're not having the windows blocked on the second story or rising stories above that. And we're a foot over. We're a foot over that. So we're building a building much closer, but we don't have all the details. I honestly don't know if I support this or I don't support it, but what I see is a whole lot of stuff that we don't know. And it's surprising to me that the ordinance isn't here so that we can read through all the land uses that are actually going to be allowed and the additional changes besides the setback that we've heard about. But reducing the setback by 50 feet to go to 4 stories from that would be normally a 2-story limit seems excessive without knowing what all the details are. So those are my comments. And again, without knowing the details, I don't know whether I like it or I don't like it. I know we need a new hotel. So.
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, sir.
My name is Scott Eilers. I did turn in a speaker card, but maybe I noted it wrong. I'm here to represent Jeremy Itz, who is the owner of the house at 509 Spike. It's the second house right off the hotel property. My main concern is that if this zoning changes, they build these large hotel buildings, as you've heard, it towers over the residences, taking away the peacefulness. And more importantly, I was concerned about the entrance off Spike Drive, which he said would be a fire entrance. I have a concern about how that would be executed, because I don't imagine the fire department is going to actually put a gate. They're probably going to put a red line that says no entrance. So depending on how that is discussed, that would be a pretty big concern for me. As you well know, there are a lot of hotels coming in on Sidney Baker, the Hampton Inn, La Quinta, Motel 6. All of those almost border the residential areas, but none of them have access, and they all border 16. This hotel will not border 16. And then finally, my concern would be Friday night lights with Tivy Stadium and with a full hotel and the crowd and the traffic. And we know how the drivers are around the stadium at night. That would be an area of concern for me and all the residences and just what could happen. Yorktown is a nice drive, but it's really not that big. And so with all these other hotels on 16, they have that entrance right on Sidney Baker. There's a lot of sort of going around on this property. So anyways, as the other people have stated, I would be worried about crime and the destruction of the peacefulness of that residential area. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the list of my speakers. Yes, sir.
My name's Kevin Perryman. I own 1419 Antler Drive, which is directly behind the proposed hotel. We are at the end of Spike Drive on the right-hand side. I'm glad you're putting in an emergency access for Spike Drive only. We have so much problems, as the previous speaker noted, on Friday nights and major events at the stadium with parking all up and down Stadium Drive in Yorktown. We don't need more traffic going through there. There's, I know, at least 6 small children between the ages of 8, 9, and 14, 15 that play in the street all the time because that is a dead-end street. My major concern with everything is going from a C2 or C3 to the PDI is the 100-foot setback. I do not think there should be anything closer than 100 feet from the property line at this magnitude or scale of project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else before we close the public hearing? All right, we're going to close the public hearing at 5:09. Anybody have questions for Drew or comments as we work through this? I'll start over
there. One of my initial questions had to do with the emergency access over there onto Spike Drive. We can gate that and keep it closed?
Yes, there, so there's a number of ways the fire department can access through some emergency gates. Sometimes it's an automatic opener that they have. Sometimes it's a Knox box or a Knox lock based on their key set that they have master keys for all of those. So Mr. Strickman, if you want to expand on that any further.
You can put a blowout gate in there too, where they don't even have to stop.
Okay.
It's secured, but you can drive right through it, won't damage the gate, it'll automatically, it'll just move out of the way.
Okay.
Which is what a lot of fire departments do.
What's the closest firehouse to this location? Is it the one off the loop?
Probably by Stripes, maybe?
I don't
Got
know
one
if
on
it would be
Alpine.
Alpine, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to think of where it might even be coming from, and my assumption is that would be mainly an exit gate.
Right, and so the fire department, on something this scale and this heavy of use, requires 2 access points.
Right.
So typically the first is going to be the closest, obviously, not going to the neighborhood.
Right.
Any additional equipment may come through the back
Gotcha.
for operations.
And then the fire lane that is kind of there on the southeastern part of the property that runs adjacent to the Brzezinski's driveway, that would be open, or would that be gated as well?
As drawn, it would be open.
Outside of those questions, I also would have concern. Let me make it clear that I fully believe that we need hotels. We need them very badly and have for quite some time. But for whatever reason, things haven't materialized. I would also have concern with the 50-foot setback, not exactly knowing what things look like Bruce had mentioned earlier. And then my only other comment is regarding the parking that would be facing the Brzezinski's house. I mean, like they mentioned, having lights shining into their backyard or whatever at 10 or 11 o'clock at night could be a detriment to them and their household, I guess.
Tom, anything?
I agree 100% with Bruce said. We need more information, I think, to make a decision, at least for myself.
Yeah, yes, I would agree. Certainly a lot of issues given all the parking lot and the roof. There's a lot of impervious structure. And drainage would certainly be, I realize there's a retention pond in the plan, but drainage is certainly a big issue that I'd like to see more info on.
Kevin?
I think like everybody, and I mean, we do need hotels, absolutely. We are needed that for a long time. I think the biggest thing that I see is being that 4-story, 50 feet from the back properties for the residential areas. It seems that front lot lends itself more to that than the back lot does. So, I mean, that's my biggest issue, concern.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mirror everybody that spoke, starting with Bruce. There's not enough information. Why wouldn't we zone this C3 and have the setbacks? Are we trying to utilize every bit of square footage that they can for everything? I agree with the Brzezinskis. I wouldn't want this in my backyard either. We all know what it gets like around here on Friday nights during football season. It's crazy enough over there as it is. And, the other thing too that Tabor started hitting on was fire lanes and gates. By all means, the other fire lane should be gated that runs beside their house if this moves forward. There's a lot of variables that are unanswered and don't make a whole lot of sense right now.
Cliff?
I'm concerned, how many rooms would these hotels be?
I believe it's 175 rooms. Is that right?
Total.
Mm-hmm. 175 rooms.
Assume there'd be 4 people in a room. How many vehicles would that be? Is it adequate parking?
Sorry, I just trying to, I can't
Parking
hear you.
would have to meet, they would not get,
Do they have any accommodation for somebody with a trailer? Usually with a hotel, you got people.
Just trying to, I can't even hear you.
He's asking about parking, Drew, and asking how many people, how many cars, if there's 4 people per room, then that's 2 cars. Would there be adequate places for somebody if they have a trailer to park? And how many parking spaces would actually be in there?
I have not done the parking count. Recommendation is that they would meet standard code for a hotel, which is based on the bedroom count, not necessarily the exact room occupancy. Based on the way it's designed right now, I do not see a trailer parking.
I'm a big proponent of getting new hotels in Kerrville. We need new hotels in Kerrville. I personally am a big proponent of property rights, but I can't see any way that you can shoehorn 2 4-story hotel buildings into this property and have to create, with an easement, a fire department second access, notwithstanding the fact that we're changing the zoning to reduce the setback. And it's a very, it's an interesting property. It's a very residential area behind it. It's got the stadium in front of it. There are a lot of kids. I agree with Bruce. There may not be enough information to determine, but I just can't see how you can take this piece of property and fit 2 4-story hotels in there and coexist with the community. And just for me, it just, I mean, we're changing, I understand that it's C2, I understand property rights, but we're changing the zoning so you can maximize 2 4-story hotels and reduce the setback from a residential neighborhood. And for me, that just doesn't, that doesn't go well, so.
And from what I'm hearing, the commission, kind of one of the questions I opened with is it a planned development just to change the setback, or is it a planned development to meet other intentions of the comprehensive plan and unique design? Sounds
Well,
like
I understand that, and I
that's what I'm saying,
understand it
that's the
may
question.
not be a PDD just for the setback, but unless you change it to a PDD, you have a 100-foot setback back there, correct?
That is correct.
So in essence, no matter what else, I know the PDD gives you more control, but I mean, it's my.
I mean, like I said, it sounds like the comments are leaning that it is a PD to change the setback.
Right, so.
Which is not the intention of the planned development district overall.
That being said, if there are no other questions or comments on this, then I will entertain an issue on the zoning change. I will entertain a motion to approve or not to approve.
Motion to decline is presented.
We can make a motion to decline?
You can.
So we have a motion to decline. Do we have,
Second.
we have a second? We have a motion to decline and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. So this motion, understanding the fact that you can take this to city council, this is our decision that will be sent to city council, but you can appeal the decision to city council to see if they see it differently. I don't know if there's a way to modify it to make it more palatable for the neighborhood, but as it stands right now, I just don't see. Anyway, we're gonna move on to 3, I guess we're moving on to 3E?
3D.
3D, I'm sorry.
An ordinance to annex into the city of Kerrville's incorporated limits with the zoning classification of IM, industrial and manufacturing, on 11.93 acre parcel comprised, I might read all the survey numbers to you, but 11.93 acres. You see the rest of that in your backup. More commonly known as 5269 Highway 27. With that, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Is the applicant here?
I'm Shane Cockerham. I'm representing Ingram Ready Mix. Basically, we're getting the Ready Mix plant from downtown and getting out across from the airport. I think it's a win for everybody.
So do I.
That's really all I have to say.
So this requires a public hearing.
I'll go ahead and go through my
Go ahead, Drew.
staff report real quick. Not quite as brief as Mr. Cockerham, but I'll try. It is a request for annexation and industrial zoning for the ready mix plant. As you can see in the aerial, and I'll go through the zoning as well. We do have some existing industrial uses surrounding the property. It is
We
consistent with.
don't have the aerial up yet, Drew. There you go.
Yeah, so there's the future land use plan. It is part of the catalyst area surrounding the airport. One of the key things for this catalyst area, obviously industrial uses surrounding the airport and being sensitive to the river, because we know we're backing up to the river on this side of Highway 27. Generally speaking, the comprehensive plan leans towards the outdoor tourism uses on the river side of Highway 27. However, that was drafted prior to the gravel and dirt plant moving in behind this property and the adjacent property. So this property itself is surrounded by industrial uses. So it is a consistent fit with the future land use plan and of course the zoning around it. Airport zoning for the airport is that dark purple. The planned development district, kind of bookending this property, are both for their specific industrial uses. And then that middle property with Fox Tank and Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing is IM, similar to this request. Don't expect any future impacts on the thoroughfare plan. Obviously, it has access to Highway 27. There will be industrial traffic in this area, but the highway is designed for it, and TxDOT reviews their plans to expand when necessary. Staff recommends approval of the annexation and the zoning based on consistency with the area and the comprehensive plan. So be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
So I'll open the public hearing at 5:21, and I have no speakers signed up to speak on this. Does anyone wishes to speak? Since we have no one to speak, I'm going to close the public hearing at 5:22. Questions, guys, on this issue? I'm really happy to see that batch plant get moved out of downtown.
Chairman, I might also add, the adjacent property and the batch plant have both received their TCEQ permits for these facilities. So Mr. Cochran can go into further detail if you're interested, but I think one of the big improvements with the ready mix plant going in, based on their TCEQ permit, they'll be required to improve that entryway for both properties because they share that entry. So that'll be an improvement for the entire area, that being paved and improved for that amount of traffic, industrial traffic coming and going. So should be some reduction in dust just on that driveway, if nothing else. So quite a few positives coming out of this one.
Any questions, guys? Any comments, anything? If not, I'll entertain a motion on this annexation and zoning.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. We get a second? Motion to approve, couple seconds. All in favor, raise your hand. This motion passes.
Who had the motion on that one?
Kevin
Tabor?
was the first. Kevin or Tabor?
Tabor had the first.
Yeah, I beat Kevin.
He beat me.
Yeah.
Second?
I think it was Tabor.
Jeff and I were fighting for that one too.
Kevin.
Kevin's got second. Okay. Thank you, guys. Sorry.
Gotta be quicker, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
That's it, we're done, right?
Almost.
We're not done?
One more. Just one more.
All right, we're going to move on to 3E, an ordinance amending the City of Kerrville, Texas zoning code, Chapter 60 of the city's Code of Ordinances to include amendments. Go ahead, Drew.
Right. Several amendments. Obviously, this was intended to be pretty wide open so we could advertise this agenda and continue through the town hall meeting that we had last week. City Council and Planning Commission had 2 joint workshops as well to discuss short-term rentals and the impacts on the community, what concerns the community had, and how best to address those concerns. Staff has taken those comments from both Council, Planning Commission, and the community, tried to kind of find where those issues lie, what were the key points, and tried to present a recommendation that addresses those concerns based on the community input. I know we have a very wide spectrum of beliefs and opinions on where short-term rentals lie, from not allowing them to no regulation and everywhere in between. So kind of hitting some of the key points that we did here coming out of the town hall meeting and those workshops. One of the big things is to make sure that they are allowed near amenities in the core shopping area and downtown. River trails, obviously a big part of the community and access to that. Protection of neighborhoods, make sure there's not an saturation or a high density of them within neighborhoods. Some of the different areas and different zoning districts in town, making sure we're consistent with those densities, matching the zoning regulations. Mr. Segerman, you pointed out earlier, part of the proposal, not for tonight's consideration because it's not directly related to zoning, but there will be a short-term rental license to go along with that, and council will dig into that and what requirements would be part of the inspection process. We're currently researching other cities to see kind of where we would fall within that. Obviously, the big concerns are life safety and property maintenance on those, and for that annual inspection.
Do you have a time frame on when you think you might have that?
The goal is to have the short-term rental license run parallel with this zoning change to city council. So if we leave tonight with a recommendation to city council, those will go to city council in September, the first and second reading in September.
Deal.
Similarly to the Kerrville 2050 plan, we've had obviously quite a bit of public engagement through the comprehensive plan, the zoning code, and obviously this specific topic, as we saw at the town hall meeting. Through the comprehensive plan, we did hear a lot of comments that short-term rentals were going to be a new or already a coming thing to Kerrville at that time. The previous zoning code did not address them either way, so there were no rules or regulations for them. As we went through 2018 and 2019 to redraft the zoning code, the code review committee, the planning commission, and council all said that we need some level of rules and regulations for short-term rentals to operate under. We did not think that having a unregulated market for those was appropriate. At that time, we decided that conditional use permit was a good tool for us to use to both allow them and allow us to address any concerns, come up with those rules and regulations that would help mitigate those concerns, and identify if there were any true vetted issues that we've had as we've worked those into the community. So over the last 2.5, 3 years, Commission's heard a number of those. We've heard the concerns through those public hearings as well as the town hall meeting. We've certainly have as we talk about, a standard list of conditions to address some of those concerns. And we've kind of moved forward with a few more that have come out of the town hall meetings. One of the big things we heard from, I think, all groups is that the conditional use permit process for the short-term rental was becoming kind of cumbersome, not just in the volume that we have, but that it is a conditional use. It's not allowed by right, but it is a pretty hard test for them to be denied. So it's not as easy and as permitted use. It's black and white, but it's not as strict as, say, like a variance that you have to prove a hardship. So it is difficult for the public to come in and give their opinion based on their neighborhood, and the commission still, within reasonable conditions, expected to approve those to some degree. Obviously, we have that threshold to look to see what the impact on the immediate area is. But those comments came from both planning commission and council, the public, the short-term rental operators. We heard that one actually across the board, that the conditional use permit process was cumbersome at least. So we are recommending that the conditional use permit process be removed at this time, and we'll go through the land use table in just a moment. And then, like I said, really trying to address what code regulations can be put in place to help protect the neighborhood and allow them within reasonable area of the downtown and the core of Kerrville. So moving directly to the land use table, you'll see that the zoning districts that we've been talking about this entire time, the residential estate, the single family R1 district, medium density R2, and residential mix would be prohibited for future short-term rentals. R1A, R3, RT, downtown arts and culture, and mixed use would be allowed by right. The R1A neighborhood, single family with accessory dwelling unit neighborhood district would be required a 250-foot buffer or a radius from that property line. So no other short-term rental could be approved within 250 feet of that approval. Again, that would be tracked through the business or through the short-term rental license process. Some supplementary requirements that we've seen come through with the CUPs from a zoning perspective, keeping the same parking ratio that we have currently. And we actually had quite a few comments that although we've included a signage allowance in the code, maybe moving to where they're not allowed a sign so that they do better blend in with the neighborhood. Obviously, the operators could speak to that to some extent. I don't believe many, if any, of ours actually put signs up advertising from the street front that they're a short-term rental. So that was one of the side comments that I received is let's not allow signs for those short-term rentals. Some of the other conditions or requirements that we heard through the town hall meeting and that we've used through the conditional use permit process would be more akin to an operational requirement. So we're recommending those go with the business license or the short-term rental license. The parking on site and not on the public street, any conditions on noise, whether it be quiet hours or a separate noise ordinance, that's obviously part of that discussion. Local contact requirement, that would be with the license and so on. So a lot of those conditions that we've used really fall within the operations of the license, not a zoning land use condition. So though they're not included in today's recommendation, they'll come in with the license. I think that's all of my presentation. I'd be pleased to answer any questions now or, of course, after the public hearing.
So we'll open this public hearing. We have quite a few speakers, so please mind your time and give us what you want to say, and so we can get everybody in. We're going to open the public hearing at 5:31. I have Janice Bowen. So Janice Bowen is left. Oh, you wave. Then I have Terry Cody.
Okay, all of this, I'm Terry Cody. All of this terminology, I'm new to. So if I could get a little clarification. So what RE, R1, R2, and RM, you're saying no short-term rentals would be allowed?
Yes, ma'am.
So within the parameters of RE through RM, I'm not sure where casitas in River Hill land. They were designed to be short-term rentals in the first place.
It would all be by zoning. It would not be by whether the property has a casita or not. If it has an R1A zoning, which allows for an accessory dwelling, I'm pretty sure almost all of River Hill is probably RE, R1, R2, which would mean that they would not be allowed under any circumstances. If there was some R1A in there, then it would be allowed.
So what is a additional dwelling? What is that considered?
That's a zoning classification by neighborhood. Drew can probably answer that question if you.
So the accessory dwelling unit is a secondary unit on a lot limited to 50% of the primary unit. And those are allowed in the R1A zoning district by right. Other districts allow them through a conditional use permit.
Right.
And sorry to interrupt you real quick. The one thing I didn't cover, all existing uses would be grandfathered. All existing short-term rentals.
Yeah, I mean, if you're already operating a short-term rental, it's grandfathered in.
Okay, good, thank you.
So you're okay.
That was the
question. Okay, Celeste Barker.
Hello, I am Celeste Barker, and I have a residence home at 601 Elm, and then also a short-term rental at 414 Westwater that my husband and I operate. A couple of things I want to point out is that basically most of the opposition that I've heard against the short-term rentals have been stating negative impacts without evidence, without proven, breaking the rules of the conditional use permits that we have already received. Also, the only request of the opposition has been prohibition versus we're coming to you all with solutions and plans for how we can all work together to make this better for everybody. Most of the people I've heard from short-term rental group have come and offered solutions similar to what you all are proposing here in the ordinance. One of the things I don't agree with is the R1A says a 250-foot radius buffer. So that's a pretty large area. Currently, short-term rentals, there could be 3 on a block, and in RT area, in R1A areas, there are actually already several on a block, not within a 250-foot
But
buffer.
they will not be affected.
I understand that, but moving forward in the R1A areas zoning map, that would be pretty restrictive for short-term rental owners or any person looking to do that in the future in that district. So I would just say that I do not agree with that 250-foot radius. I think if the focus is to have it in a certain area, then we should look at a different type of buffer, whether it be a percentage of homes in that area or just a different metric for your measuring that. Let's see. Also, the licensing fee. I've heard no amount of the licensing fee, only that there would be one. I would like to know that from the planning and zoning or whoever is going to decide that, what kind of burden that would bear for any business or short-term rental
I think it
owner.
would be minimal, but I don't know that that's been established yet.
Okay. And let's see. Oh, the parking. I also want to bring up that the parking for an off-site manager, I think most of us as short-term rental owners have followed that, but moving forward, I would ask that that also be looked at because an off-site manager is never there when there are guests. Rarely. If they come to solve a problem and they leave. So again, I think that would be something that I would like to be looked at as well, or discussed more with other options or surrounding that. So thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Madry? Miss Madry? Is that Libba?
Hi, y'all. My name's Andrea Tinning, but I am a friend of Libba Madry, so I'm going to speak for her for
Sure.
a little bit. She's here, but I'm at the microphone. So, couple things about me real quick. I am a marketing specialist. I know a lot about branding and how to represent a product, a company. And a big part of y'all's 2050 plan was branding the city of Kerrville as the capital of the Texas Hill Country, as a vibrant place to live, as a friendly place to live, and welcoming. Above all else, a word I saw a lot was welcoming. So, hearing y'all speak today, being at this meeting, reading all I have about the short-term rental discussion, I think there is a great opportunity for us to come up with a creative solution for short-term rentals that other towns have struggled with the same problems, but they haven't had this dialogue that y'all have. And hearing about the hotel thing today, where y'all were voting on a hotel that was going to get proposed and create similar issues to some that I've heard vocalized about the short-term rentals. Short-term rentals can take the weight off of that. And if you guys use this tool to your advantage, you can advance the branding of a friendly place to live that has been mentioned in the 2050 plan, because short-term rental owners are your best brand ambassadors for that. When people come to stay at a short-term rental, they are getting taken care of the way they would be staying in a town like a local. They're experiencing it in its purest form. So if you're willing to work with short-term rental owners, you have this opportunity to draw in exactly the type of folks that you want to visit this town, to be inspired by the culture of friendliness. And going forward, I think looking at this chart, just from a numbers perspective, if you're condensing all of the short-term rental operations into a few areas, you're pigeonholing all of the problems that come with short-term rentals to those areas. If you spread it out, it's lifting the burden from other areas of the community to where it's not as condensed. And my main thing is the Madry family. Libba has been in my whole life. And what y'all would be missing is somebody to be an ambassador of Kerrville, somebody you would want to represent this city. This family is the kindest, the most caring, most welcoming, most friendly people. And to take away the opportunity to have an ambassador like that for your town, it sets a precedent. If other families aren't going to get that, then you're missing out on the kind of people you want to represent you. And I think that would be a shame, because I think there are a lot of great friendly folk in this town who would own a short-term rental and open it up to people so they could see how wonderful Kerrville is, because I know that's what Libba wants to do. The main thing I want to say, I guess, to wrap it up, because I'll try to be concise. I'm sorry, I'm kind of speaking off the cuff because I felt inspired. But going forward, this town has a unique opportunity to change the game for the way short-term rentals run. I know a lot of other cities have had the same problem. I know Fredericksburg has been kind of the buzzword. It doesn't have to be like Fredericksburg, and you can rewrite the script on short-term rentals where communities are working together and they're involved. You are able to direct money back into the local economy by encouraging visitors to go to restaurants, local businesses, shops, places that are your favorite thing as a local. They will get the business because you directed them there, and these people are saving money that would otherwise go to corporate hotels. The money's going straight to families here and then straight to businesses here. And I guess that's all I have to say. But
Thank you.
I hope you guys are inspired.
Tom Kent.
Hey y'all, my name's Tom Kent. I've been coming to this town for over a decade. Love the town. Becoming more and more. And during COVID, we had to get out. We were in Austin. To get out of Austin, and there's only one place to go, and that was here. We bought a couple properties. I'm pretty much living here at least half the time during the remodel. Putting a lot of money in this town. All local business, local tradesmen. We came here originally for the triathlon, and that's around the river trail. I remember when it wasn't on the trail. Either myself or my partner has done every race, sometimes both of us. I remember before the trail was built, we were running the Strs, and it was in the parking lot, and now the trail is just gorgeous. It's such a great place to come. But when the debate was happening around that trail, there was all kinds of fear and uncertainty about, is it going to bring gangs to this town? Is there going to be graffiti? That debate was happening then. It was different. There was fear of the unknown. I'm hearing a lot of the same things now about short-term rental. This is kind of a new idea, a new concept. But it's not really new, except it was kind of limited to like beach towns. Now it's all over, and everyone gets to experience life in the neighborhoods. And I do understand. There's fear and uncertainty and doubt. It's different. And I know there's a lot of scary stories because that's what gets clicks. That's what people follow. But that is such a small amount of things that actually happen. As far as I know, there's been 0 police calls at any short-term rental in this town. Okay, I have to admit something. We had an emergency call at our house, at one of our guests. The baby came early. They had to go to Peterson and deliver a baby. That's the only emergency call that we had in any of our properties. And that's really all I came to say. I know it's different. I know it's change, but it's increasing the draw to this town, the value of the community. Moreover, the licensing conversation, I couldn't be more in favor of, because I want to add confidence to this town that the people who are running STRs in this town are following the rules, are raising the value of the area, and are being good neighbors. That's all I got.
Thank you. Robin Perrin?
Some of the questions that the people have had already has already been addressed by the courts. And I'm sad to see that my case isn't here because there are some things that that I feel like we're kind of steering into right now. But we continue to hear speakers say that STRs are businesses, but the Texas Supreme Court disagreed, identified it as residential use. But the people that have come up so far in the last, few weeks or months, not one person has used even an anecdotal evidence for not having short-term rentals here. Sorry, this is interesting. But I agree with Tom. If there is a problem with short-term rentals, we do need to have, during this ordinance, we do need to have a way to address it because we don't want to look bad. And we don't want them either. And I think some of the fears that people have raised are also fears that we have. We don't want party houses. We don't want a lot of, neighborhood trash. We don't want a lot of neighborhood parking and things like that. But the following words are not my own. They're words from two briefs that our Texas Attorney General submitted regarding STRs to the Third Court of Appeals and the Texas Supreme Court. The right to lease our homes is a fundamental right of property ownership in Terrence versus Thompson. In the Zatari case, after going before the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, they concluded two major things. Cities cannot restrict the assembly, as in restricting the number of people at the STR, and the city cannot ban single-family STRs. Now, these are things that our state attorney general has said in his brief. He has a 102-page brief, and I'm a little bit of a nerd, and I read all 102 pages of it. Cities do have the authority to adopt zoning regulations if they serve a valid public purpose, such as, it's so hard when people are talking behind me to do this, to preserve the public health, safety, and morals. So courts have found that legitimate regulatory objectives, including preventing and preserving the character of a community, but the fact that the court didn't buy this argument is particularly interesting to me. Instead, the lack of evidence that STRs disrupted neighborhoods and the fact that STRs were historically allowed and the court's recognition of that fact, that the right to rent property is fundamental privilege of private property ownership, tilted the scales in the state's favor. Okay, so we must focus on clear and serious burdens to neighboring properties when determining whether a compelling interest is at issue. But the privileges guaranteed by the Bill of Rights cannot be destroyed. We must not assume that the zoning codes inherently serve a compelling interest. The city of Kerrville has not provided sufficient evidence of a serious burden on neighboring properties. Rather, it has not provided any evidence in our case. But Ken Paxton said, by taking away its citizens' property rights to lease their homes out as they see fit, the city has violated their constitutional rights. So Austin, I know you say we're not comparing Austin or Fredericksburg, any of these things, but this has to do with what happens in the courts according to STRs. Paxton said we cannot take away people's individual property rights. In his 102-page brief, he argued Austin did a sting operation where police officers were set out to watch STRs to make sure that they were a nuisance. Well, yet they absolutely proved the opposite. They said they had less 911 calls, less problems with these STRs than they did long-term residents or people who owned the properties there. And also in the Garrett versus Simpson's case, citizens have a long-held right to lease their property, no matter what the time limit is, under 30 days or not. They're not doing anything different on day 29 than they are on 30.
Time is up, ma'am.
Okay, I didn't know we had time. Did you say that earlier?
That's a rule.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Sarah Lewis.
Real quick, Chairman, just want to point out, I'm gonna go ahead and switch over the map. So if somebody wants the zoning map or well, I say I am. There we go. Just to run through this, you have the key on the side that shows the zoning districts from the
We don't have it.
downtown arts and culture district.
We don't have it.
Are your screens not working?
There it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Downtown Arts and Culture District is the pink in the middle. Mixed use is the blue to the south. RT is the orange kind of surrounding downtown. R1A is that brighter yellow surrounding the RT, kind of moving outward from the center of town. Off the top of my head, there's not much, if any, R1A outside of that area. So as you move to the further outskirts of town, you are in the R1 or R2 districts, RM, and then of course some RE for those large estate areas. But I just wanted to put that up there as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sarah Lewis. I have a short-term rental on Aransas, and I was here right out a year ago for our approval. I'm having flashbacks. And I just wanted to kind of echo some of the other things that have already been said. I feel like that the opposition to these is based on fear and not facts, because I know at our meeting we asked if there'd ever been any police calls at any short-term rentals, and there hadn't at that time, and it appears that there haven't been since then either. Like I said, we have a tiny house. We allow a maximum of 2 people, and the people that come are always asking me for recommendations on where to go, like restaurants, wineries, where to go shopping, and I'm happy to tell that. And so they get that kind of concierge experience of like, hey, these are the things that locals appreciate here. Go spend your money there, which you won't necessarily get at a hotel. I am super in favor of getting rid of the CUP and going to a permit process. I would ask if maybe in going to the permit process or the licensing process, if we could open up like R1, because I think we would be declined if we applied under these new rules, even though we are like right next to Shriner. If opening up this permit process, we could open it up to more of the city. And then in the review of the licensing, if people are not keeping up with their property or having issues with their tenants or whatever, maybe their licenses will get renewed. But you know, like we want good tenants too. We want our properties to maintain their value, and we don't want to be a burden on our neighbors either. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jennifer Wise.
Some pretty impressive presentations. They'll be hard to follow. They said some of the points that I wanted to say, so I'm just going to condense it to what's left from mine. There's a proverb that says, the first to state his case seems right until the other party comes and cross-examines him. Since the institution of a CUP process for STRs, opposition has been voiced by many, claiming that short-term rentals would negatively impact residential neighborhoods R1, R2. However, the record has shown that to be false, and in many instances, STRs have improved neighborhoods and also contributed to the economic growth of the community. Yet the accusations continue, and STRs have been painted as guilty in the court of public opinion without the proof of evidence to support it. It's also been my observation that applicants for STRs have been poised, collected, and respectful during their presentations. My fear is that the sometimes loud or emotional or angry opposition might cause the city to create regulations and prohibitions simply to appease them. So prohibition in R1 and R2 should only be implemented if STRs have proven themselves to be a nuisance. And I plead tonight that the commissioners not approve amendments that prohibit STRs and instead allow them to operate peacefully within reasonable permit regulations. Thank you.
Jack Hampton. Sir?
Gonna pass.
Michael Killen.
Good evening. My name is Michael Killeen. I reside at 2120 Vista Ridge Drive. If I might ask a question from Drew. As I understand it, you are going to prohibit short-term rentals in R1 and R2 zoning. Is that correct?
That is what's before the board, yes.
So existing neighborhoods around the city, irregardless of prices of homes, will be protected from the short-term rentals.
The zoning, RE, R1, and R2, you will not be allowed to have a short-term rental. It has nothing to do with the price of the homes. It's just those
Okay.
zoning classifications.
One thing that I went to the town hall meeting, and I was distressed to hear that from the council and from the zoning board that y'all didn't care about the adopted covenants and land use restrictions for Kerrville's neighborhoods.
No, it's not that we don't care. The city doesn't enforce deed restrictions or CCNRs.
The recent short-term rental ordinance in Arlington, Texas, which I understand from newspaper articles was held valid by the court, bans most short-term rentals and requires an applicant for a short-term rental to provide HOA information. The Court of Appeals denied the appeal by the STR owners, and the Supreme Court denied their petition for review in January 22. That's the information I received in researching this. I'm assuming that's correct. And I also presume that the city of Arlington is looking for conflicts with the adopted neighborhood covenants before approving a short-term rental. You know, I would propose that applicants for short-term rentals in Kerrville provide a copy of applicable HOA information and deed restrictions in their application. If they have purchased the property, they are subject to the same restrictions as other homeowners in the neighborhood. No one is asking the city to regulate whether you can plant daffodils or roses, but approving a commercial business that is not allowed in the deed restrictions is another story. As an example, our deed restrictions prohibit duplex houses, apartment houses, boarding houses, and hotels. Sounds suspiciously like a short-term rental would fit into all of those categories. The city should not be aid and abet somebody doing something that's already not allowed. I hope that you consider that before you pass this and add some information to have y'all look at existing deed restrictions. They're adopted and everybody that lives in that neighborhood has to abide by them. And we shouldn't have the city come in and just run roughshod over the neighborhood that has the appropriate deed restrictions to eliminate these short-term rentals. Short-term rentals for a lot of people are a clear and present danger to any neighborhood. So I'm glad you're taking the action to remove them from R1 and R2. But we need to look at where there are existing restrictions that would pose a problem. If Arlington is looking at that and other cities around Texas are looking at examining the existing covenants and land use deed restrictions, then I think Kerrville should do the same thing. It seems inappropriate for the city to override existing restrictions. Anyway, thank you.
We have the assistant city attorney here. The city does not enforce CCNRs and deed restrictions, correct?
Correct. Deed restrictions run with the land to individual property owners, and the city doesn't have standing, so we're mixing up two different things.
Correct.
So it's about people who have standing who can enforce those things, and usually that's the homeowners association or property owners who are affected by the violation of the deed restriction. It is not.
Why can't you put in your regulation the same requirement that Arlington did to provide HOA? You know, put it on the applicant to provide you the information to make an adequate, well-educated decision instead of being in the dark about what uses that property can be used for.
I'm not familiar with the Arlington regulations regarding this. I do know that Arlington did not ban short-term rentals. They determined that short-term rentals were only allowed within the entertainment district. So they didn't ban them, they only limited them to a specific. And so they limited it to a specific area. It is possible, I guess, that Arlington specifically said that they would consider deed restrictions or covenants in their decision as to whether or not they would grant it. But I would have to look at Arlington's
policy in order to determine that?
Well, I'm not an attorney, but, you know, I've read all the news articles about this. Maybe, I may be wrong.
Thank you,
but-
sir. We appreciate it.
Well, good luck. But thanks for banning them in the R1 and R2.
Well, they're not banned. This is just, and again, I'm under the understanding, like you said, that deed restrictions and HOA guidelines, and I live in a community with an HOA, the city has no standing enforcing deed restrictions and HOA guidelines, and that's why they can't step in and put those they can't enforce those regulations because they're not a party to the regulations. That's between the property owner, the HOA, and the homeowners. We're good.
So if somebody wants to come permit a hotel in a private neighborhood.
Permitting has nothing to do with deed restrictions and HOA guidelines. So
you would go ahead and do that anyway.
if someone is coming to,
It's not germane to this discussion.
okay,
Not part of the discussion.
yeah, and I agree, it isn't. Victoria Lean, am I saying that right?
I'm Victoria Killeen, and I live at 2120 Vista Ridge Drive. And I'm here to oppose the proposed ordinance regarding short-term rentals in single-family residential communities in Kerrville. Excuse me. This proposed ordinance inserts commercial businesses into residential neighborhoods. No one buys a home, especially right now, at the substantial cost of today's housing market, for the pleasure of living next door to a daily revolving door of strangers. We don't want tenants, we want neighbors. Kerrville has zoning in place with commercial corridors for pleasure and business travelers in our area. We have hotels to accommodate them. If Kerrville needs more, then the Kerr Economic Development Corporation and the Kerrville Chamber of Commerce should recruit them for our commercial corridors. Our 2050 plan details specifics about the residential areas of Kerrville, none of which mentions commercial use of these homes. One of the things that our 2050 plan repeatedly mentions is the guiding principle to, quote, continue to leverage Kerrville as a great place for retirement living, close quotes. I live in one of those retirement neighborhoods. Our plans tell us that 27% of our city's residents are over 65 years of age. Quote, the net worth for this group generates a level of spending potential unmatched by any other age group. The plan encourages efforts to grow this retirement base. From my experience as a 15-year resident of Kerrville, what most retirees want is safety and stability in our neighborhoods. We want to know our neighbors. We don't want to awaken to new strangers next door every morning. But STRs don't affect only retirement communities. Fortunately, our 2050 plan addresses those issues as well when it states that a guiding principle of the plan is to maintain quality and value of existing neighborhoods. How does inserting a transient commercial enterprise into a neighborhood maintain its quality and value? A second guiding principle seeks to, quote, celebrate and honor the character of each neighborhood and its culture. How does a revolving door of visitors celebrate or honor that neighborhood's culture? It destroys it by creating a culture of transition. There is no continuity of culture when the faces change every day at checkout time. Finally, our 2050 plan wants Kerrville's leadership to, quote, promote the use of inclusive processes to capture the voices of the citizenry. Inclusive processes should result in better acceptance for the policy decisions and reduce the unintended consequences that could have been avoided if people affected by the actions taken had been consulted beforehand. My request of Kerrville's leadership is that you listen to the people affected by this proposed ordinance. Most of us won't be checking out at 3 p.m. We'll be here in the days, weeks, and months that follow. Thank you, board members, for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Nikki Kane.
Do you have those?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Nikki Keynes, and I live here in Kerrville. And what I made copies for you, and I'm sorry I mocked them up. I started writing on them before I made copies. Was the result of that Arlington case that went before the Texas Supreme Court. And what I'm here to do, and I'm with the Kerrville chapter of this Texas Neighborhood Coalition. We're trying to give you the tools that will help levy what's going on with our STRs. I want to start with saying that I never thought that STRs would be equated with residential occupation. It seems like an oxymoron. The key word is reside, meaning you live there, you receive your mail there. When my friends and my family come to visit me, they don't pay, but they also don't receive their mail there. So neither my friends and family who visit nor someone in a short-term rental is a resident. They are a guest. I'd like to say that I agree with so many of these comments tonight, and the people that are speaking up for their neighborhoods are doing it because they really care. They know their neighbors. I can tell you almost everybody in my neighborhood by name. I can tell you what medical procedure they just had or who's died, and the comprehensive plan that says they're going to maintain the quality of our neighborhoods. That's what we're trying to do. And as some of the other speakers have said, when people are coming in and out of any of those STRs, you have a 94-year-old widow who's by herself, and she sees lights and she sees people coming in and out all the time. Again, if she's retired, of course, but where is her stress level? She doesn't know who she's looking at across the street. She has no idea who they are. And I understand that the owners can say they have vetted them up one day and down the other. That is that's no peace for especially our older community. And we have retired here and we want to live in peace. I'd like to say too that I've had just in the last couple of days, a various number given to me about the number of STRs here in Kerrville. They've gone as high as 80, but I've received a public information results and it only gives me 44. And I've gone out and checked some of them, and I don't see how they are STRs. It would not be the cutesy place where I would want to spend a vacation for a lot of these. And I think the physical inspection of these existing ones would help a lot. I understood, I also put in a public information request and found out for the year 2021, SDRs only brought in $130,000 for hotel tax. And I'm saying as residents here, I think a resident, families and everything, they're gonna bring in a lot more money. And every time we take a home off the market for an STR, we leave somebody out in the cold. And for 2022 already, 20 STRs have already been approved. That's 20 homes that are off the market while we wait 3 years for development of maybe 40 homes. And I just don't see where the numbers balance out. So I'm asking if you'll review that Arlington list, compare it to what you're looking at right now. And I hope tonight is not the end. I hope it's like an in the process revision. We just want you to hear our hearts and know that we're wanting you to be proactive instead of reactive, whether it's the stuff that's gone on in Fredericksburg or the case we just heard in our backyard in Comfort. We don't want it to happen here because we want Kerrville to have that good name. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got about 3 or 4 more speakers. We're going to take a short break so someone can go to the bathroom or go get a drink of water or something. So we'll take about 5 minutes.
Thank you.
back. See, I would like to see that too, but unfortunately, when you get, I don't think you can. We can ask, but I don't think you can. All right, we're back in session. Our next speaker is Karen Sides.
Good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I have to tell you on behalf of our little group of Kerrville chapter of the Texas Neighborhood Coalition, we were very happy to see the proposal. It is a huge step in bringing us in alignment with where other cities across the state, across the country, across the world are moving in terms of managing and regulating STRs so they don't do damage to neighborhoods. I wanted to also just make a clarification, because a lot of what I keep hearing from some of the investors and STR owners is that, you know, there's no evidence of any problems with STRs. And I think maybe we can clarify it by describing it this way. We see it in our group as there's three issues. One are the annoyances and nuisances, which they do get reported to the owners. I don't know that we really have a system to report it to the city, so the city might not have those. But those are things that I think could be addressed through some of the permit and licensing things. And we're happy, we've sent some recommendations based on what other folks have done. But there's another kind of bucket of concern, and that has to do with the social capital that's spoken of in the 2050 plan, where it's building neighborhoods, helping neighbors become more united to help their neighborhoods thrive. There's a whole section devoted to the caring of neighborhoods and supporting neighbors. That's something that when in my particular neighborhood, we've got just 9 houses on the street. 4 of them are classified as short-term rentals. So we've lost neighbors galore over the last year, and it empties out the kind of your soul, so to speak. It's a big deal that we've lost so much. So that's the second bucket, is that we're losing neighborhoods. The STRs literally dismantle neighborhoods because they're taking the neighbors away and replacing them with transient individuals who are kind of coming and going and are not part of the community or contribute to the community. The third bucket is the one where, as we take all of these homes, and in to a large extent have been very affordable homes, off the market, we already have such a crisis of housing. And I don't know if y'all talk to people or you look to see or hear the stories of people who are being either evicted or non-renewed in their leases, having to find someone else. There is no place for them to go. The rental opportunities are just almost nil. And even if you find one, it's not affordable. Things are so expensive. And I'll give an example of my own daughter, where we've had conversations. If she gets that notice from her landlord that, well, we're going to turn this into an STR, it's already known that she won't be able to stay in Kerrville because there won't be a place for her to go that she can afford at all. They just don't exist. That shouldn't be happening when we have that level of a crisis. Taking houses off the market, this is not the time to do it. So I'd like to bring your attention again to the Arlington. You have some information there. We've been working very closely with the attorney who defended in the ordinances that Arlington now has. He defended it to the state Supreme Court. So our feelings are, they've already got a model that has been vetted through the Supreme Court. They've got great detail on permits, on inspection checklist. It's very clear, and I think that would be helpful to the STR owners, because there's no question. We can use that as a model.
Ma'am.
Am I done?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. But those are those three. So just kind of understand, it's not just the nuisances. It's these other things that are really even more pressing.
Thank you, ma'am. Anna Ramirez.
Hello, good afternoon.
I am here basically just to reiterate what they said, and I'm not gonna say it, but, going back to the fear of these people that they think we are in fear of these STRs, that's not what it is. What it is we are standing up for our rights as residents, as homeowners, as investors. I'm an investor. When I bought my home, I invested in my home to retire and to live peacefully and to know my neighbors. So, like Ms. Karen said, we have 4 STRs on our little bitty street. So I only have really one neighbor, her, that I can go to, or we can talk, or we can go out to eat. So, and like they said earlier, the people that come in and out from STRs are eating out in our restaurants. Well, so am I. So is my family when they come in to visit me. I take them out to eat at Mamacita's. I take them out to eat, at other restaurants. I shop at H-E-B. Now my H-E-B grocery list is $92 a week almost. So I'm putting in a lot of money to live here. And so going back, like they said, about the 2050 plan, we have to try to maintain our residential neighborhood and beautify it. And I'm doing my part by beautifying my area, my yard. I'm so proud to live here. So it's not a fear thing. It is just a wanting to live peacefully in this beautiful town that yes, it's welcoming to retirees, it's welcoming to visitors, and I'm all for that. But like I said, I also don't want to leave Kerrville because of the fact that my neighborhood is dismantled because of these STRs. So I thank you for recommending the R1, R2, no STRs. R1 basically because I'm in the R1 area. So thank you very much for that. And I hope, like I said, you look at that checklist for what Arlington did. It's already there. All we have to do is basically model it. And I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. White.
Good evening, everyone. I know you want to get out of here, so I'll be fast. I'm Bill White. I'm also the president of the River Hill Homeowners Association. And before this session breaks up, I think it's very important to point out one thing, and that's that a tremendous challenge has been laid out there to address these STRs. And the way that the council, the P&Z, and the staff has gone at this is very commendable. I think with their hard work and their diligence, and they certainly listened to everybody and anybody that had anything to say, you came up with an excellent plan. We thank you very much for it. You should be recognized for it.
All right, Mr. Hampton, this is your last chance. Did you want to speak?
Yeah.
I hadn't forgotten you.
Okay.
He had.
I was waiting to see about the Arlington ordinances. I was really concerned about that because I think that's definitely a good plan that we should look at and use as a guideline to follow up. There's always different communities have to adjust for different things, but I think it's a good outline to go by. And I'm certainly pleased to hear that the R1 and R2 are proposed to be free from the STRs. I think we should keep the neighborhoods friendly and where we do know our neighbors, continue to know our neighbors. I know our street, everybody knows everybody, seems like, and what you're doing. But that's to be expected, I guess. It's kind of a small town on our street. But anyway, appreciate all the work you're doing, and we look forward to the future to see what happens here. But
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
I have no more speakers except I expect that I'm going to hear. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Wilt, would you like to speak?
You are welcome to go first.
Hello, my name is Margaret Cross and I am a Kerrville resident. And yes, I am old, but I'm not afraid. I just want to say that. I'll take it on. Bring it. But these STRs are definitely a business to me in my thinking. I'm sorry. But they are done for a profit. And I do applaud the recommendations given for the RE, R1, and R2 restriction. I think that's a good suggestion, one I follow and one I would back and support. And I just want to be neighborly with everybody. And I want to say I am an ambassador for Kerrville as I travel, and I too tell people of Kerrville, and I tell them I am a resident. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Gary?
Right into the microphone. I actually didn't sign up to be a speaker. I was
You're
just going to
okay.
be a fly on the wall. But I just wanted to remind a couple of things. Number one, remind everyone that long-term renters is also a for-profit business, and that that continues to come up. I too am very actually happy with the majority of the suggestions. I think we're heading in definitely the right direction. My biggest concern is with the 250-foot radius. Similar to when we open grape juice, there's rules that have to do with distance from a church and school zones for alcohol use businesses. And it's from the front door to like down the street. Like there's a different way to do that. My biggest concern about the radius is that it knocks out houses behind you on a whole nother street that may have like completely different access and all of those things. So I would ask that you reconsider the way that is done. And I also, like in the town hall meeting, we were able to see like a map that showed what that would look like. And I don't feel like that's been provided yet. So I would ask that you refrain from making that decision until we really have a better handle on that piece. And then my last comment is about knowing your neighbors. Really at the end of the day, I hope that everybody goes out and gets to know their neighbors. I actually, I am the one that is always brought up in this meeting. I am the one who has 3 houses that are short-term rentals on one street. And as they pointed out, they said that they're losing neighbors left and right. 2 of them were vacant when we purchased them. They did not have neighbors in them prior to us purchasing them, and the person before. One was used as a drug distribution center. And the other one was overrun by pets that the CPA had to come in and remove them. Both were falling down. So we did not kick people out of this neighborhood. We did have to remove one resident from the neighborhood, and we took very good care of them and made sure that they had a place to find and lived within their bounds. But she also said that there were 4 short-term rentals on our street. And if you know your neighbors, you would know that one of those has not been a short-term rental for years, and that Adrienne lives there with her son. And she lives right next door to the ladies who claim they only have one neighbor there. There are other long-term renters there that are wonderful and very nice. There are people who've moved in across the street from them for months, and no one has been neighborly. So neighborhoods start with people, and I actually admitted immediately that I probably wasn't as neighborly as I should have been in the middle. In the beginning, I should have gone and introduced myself. Unfortunately, this process seems to promote some animosity and some fear even from our side. I was afraid to talk to someone. But when we bought the house, no one knew we were going to put a short-term rental in there. And the first time I met my neighbors in my neighborhood was 1.5 years after we bought that property. Nobody dropped a note off at my house that said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." Nobody brought me cookies. Nobody even waved. And so neighborhoods start with people. And that's the hard part. I haven't said anything because I want to be a good neighbor. I want to make sure that we are doing the right thing by the neighborhood. But when the information is not being presented in the right way, I felt the need to speak out. So please take that into consideration, and I really do think we're heading in the right direction. I'm appreciative of the open dialogue. I have had tea with one of my neighbors, and we had great discussions, and that's part of my continued heart for the fact that long-term rentals are also a very big issue that we need to take care of, because I know it's a part of her heart as well. So just wanted to put that out there, and go be a good neighbor, everybody.
Yeah. Chuck?
Earlier during these proceedings, I heard that the conditional use permitting process is cumbersome. I would say, good, needs to be. If you're paying attention and you saw 3A, what transpired here was exactly what the conditional use permitting process is all about. You get the facts on the table, people get, all affected parties get to say their piece, you get to ask questions, and then you make a judgment on the merits of that specific situation. It's the way it's supposed to be done. I've been involved in thousands of CUP processes, won some, lost some, but I can't say any of them were unfair. If you bypass the CUP process, you lose control of the process, because nobody in this room is smart enough to draft all the regulations that are ever going to pop up in the future. And 5 years down the road, you'll say, oh, we didn't see that, or we didn't see that, or I can't do anything about it. My hands are now tied because we turned over the process to a bunch of regulations that we thought were perfect. Seeing it happen, it's not fiction, it does happen. So what I'm saying is, all these issues that get popped up, the lady who just talked, she talked about the merits of her particular situation and why it's different than other places. Not going to have that situation where I live, but I appreciate the fact that it could be there. All that comes out in the CUP process. It all gets put up on the board, you get to talk about it. Does it make sense or does it not make sense? But if you give all that up, then you all walk away. And what you end up walking away from are the citizens of this town. And this town turns into Austin, Fredericksburg. The guy who was here earlier was from Austin. I don't want him to turn our town into Austin. I used to live in Houston. I don't live there anymore for a reason. Hang on to the CUP process. It will protect all of us and keep this town Kerrville. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Okay, so I know you've already spoken, Ms. Cody. I don't think so. You've had your 3 minutes or whatever it is. Bruce, have you spoken in the? Okay, go ahead.
Bruce Drakey, 615 Earl Garrett. The plan presented tonight is much better than I was expecting, and I think staff really needs to be applauded. And in a lot of ways, not necessarily in shape or size or anything, in a lot of ways it's similar to what Arlington is trying to do. They did an overlay, they created an STR zone, but we've actually created almost an SDR zone because of the way the R1A lays out and the RT and such, and the downtown arts and cultural. And so it's actually really similar in some ways. Now, Arlington didn't put any distance restrictions within that zone, whether it was R1A or RT or downtown arts and cultural district or whatever. And they would actually, in their zone, would have included the mixed use on the east side of town. And I'm not really sure why we left that out. But that's a really interesting.
Mixed use is in.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. I almost asked to put that up. So the only kind of the difference that we're doing from what I'm seeing in the Arlington one, and I've studied a bit, but not as much, I'm sure others, is there's no radius distance, there's no density change in the Arlington plan as long as you're in what they created. It was an SDR zone, which we have really effectively done by using R1A and mixed use, downtown arts and cultural, and RT. And so that's actually really interesting and maybe a good solution. I am concerned, as the last speaker mentioned, about dropping the CUP. just having used prescriptive things and such in doing green building and different things over the years, it's so hard to think of every single thing as he mentions. And that CUP process, well, it may be very time consuming, and I do appreciate all the time that you all volunteer to us, because it's a tremendous amount of time. But I do have a concern about that opportunity for public discourse and hearing what people say and having an opportunity in a certain case to say, we do need some conditions on this property. So just a comment, I think we're headed in a great direction. I don't think that the density issue is a really good idea. It is actually very similar to what they're doing in Arlington, and they have other things that aren't part of the zoning and P&Z process that we're talking about. So I'm not addressing those. I'm talking about from a zoning standpoint. But more than anything else, I want to compliment staff, because I was really expecting something that was going to be ugly, and this is a great forward step. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Yes, sir.
All right. My name is Russell Nemke. I live at 515 Elm Street. It's actually in the R1A zone. Across the street is not, but that doesn't really make doesn't matter. But what I was going to say is there's a lot of talk in here about all this stuff, but this is just an ordinance amending the city of Curlew. We're not talking about we're going to change anything today, right? Like we're just going to say, yeah, we do need to make an amendment.
What we're gonna do, Russ, and once we get through this, close the public hearing, talk about this, we're gonna make a recommendation that it gets changed, and then it's gonna go to city council. So we're not changing anything, we're making a recommendation to city council.
Okay. Okay. Well, I would say that, so this is a recommendation, and if it passes today, this is a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I would say at that point, then that kind of changes my presentation, but so if we're going to limit them, the young lady that was talking earlier said it's kind of less intrusive on the neighborhoods, like we're saying, is if you put the 250 radius through all of the R1, is what I would say. That would be my recommendation. I know that's not what a lot of people want to hear, but that would solve your problem on your street, right? Only one would be on your street, and that would help to increase the spread throughout the city, is what I would say. And some other people said this too. There's already a bunch on West Water Street, Guadalupe Street. Those are all R1s. Guadalupe Street's R1, Westwater's R1A. So the city's either going to have to just leave it as it is, or you're going to have to change the zoning on those streets.
No, everything.
On RT. No. I mean, I understand that they're going to stay that way, but those areas are changing. The R1 on Guadalupe Street, right here, is R1, and there's already a ton on there, and there's going to be more. There's going to be more, and if you don't approve it to where they can do that, they'll just say, well, call my lawyer, right? So, which is okay. I'm just saying, if you put the 250 radius on there, then they wouldn't do that, and they would be more compliant with it, I think. Maybe not. And it's protecting neighborhoods, which I agree with. So anyway, I changed. So what I was going to say, so I'm not being too concise, I'm sorry. So, but anyway, I've been coming to a lot of these things. I haven't really heard what the definition of the timeline of a short-term rental is. Like, is it
less than 30 days?
Okay, perfect. So that answers my question on that. And I think that's good, because people are coming into town, like say professionals, if they would want to rent a room out to somebody, like for hospital staff and stuff. I think that's excellent. Anyway, I think that's about it. I would say I'll bring it back. This is what I wrote on number 1, and since I got a different answer, I changed it. I think it's a little rushed to go ahead and vote yes to make this recommendation there because of that first thing that was up there, the little handout. I think there's a lot more talk, that, especially from the pros and the negatives or whatever else. I think there's a lot more talk that needs to be done from R1 through R1A and R2 and all that other stuff. I think there's still a lot of stuff to talk about in there. That's about it.
Thanks, Rustin.
All right, thank you.
Chairman, just one clarification. The bright yellow is R1A.
Hmm?
So Guadalupe Street, the example that was given, is actually R1A on the north side and R2 on the south side.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yep.
Okay.
Pull it up on our screen.
So, but what I'm saying is the 250 feet, they'd be closer than that, I would think, on Guadalupe Street. And on West Water Street's R1A as well, and they're within 50 feet of each other.
Martin, can you switch the board screens to the PowerPoint?
For anybody who came in late, grandfathered, nothing there is grandfathered.
Right. Sorry, anyone that did come in late, all the existing ones would be grandfathered with this proposal, so they'd go through that
And so, yeah.
short-term license process, but the change is not retroactive.
And I think the gentleman, I think he left, and I've got a minute to go. I guess no, it stopped. The gentleman said, like, you know, and so did Bruce, about talking about the CUP process. You can always apply for a conditional use permit no matter what, right? And you can get approved if it's right. I can apply for a conditional use permit of my property if I wanted to, whatever I wanted. If I get it approved by the zoning, I get approved. If I don't, I don't. Right?
That would be a question for planning services, but if the zoning does not allow for what you want to do, I guess you could.
If it's not allowed at all, it's done. Yeah. So it's only if it's an allowable use, like with a condition. If it's not marked at all, Russell, it's just, you can't apply for it.
So that brings me back. I got 35 seconds. That brings me back to Guadalupe Street and West Water Street. Is they're already zoned in that kind of area, and so they're going to say the 250 feet is not going to do it. So you limit yourself in those really wanted. That's right by the river trail, right? We said it's good by the river trail. It's good by amenities. Then you limit those already right there. I think we're limiting ourselves on that. So that's why I would say move the 250 towards the left on the graph. But that's just my opinion. And I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy. Roy?
Hello, my name's Roy Thompson, 528 Fairway Drive, Kerrville, Texas. I live on the 18th fairway of River Hill. Right 90 yards across from me is where a lot of these VRBO, Airbnb, short-term rentals are. I love the neighborhood approach, ladies. I go talk to them every time they're out there, but I also cook on my back porch. I do all my stuff out back. Never once have I been bothered, harassed, or even noticed that I don't even sometimes know when the people are out there. So not a traffic problem and certainly not a crime problem. But I will also have to say, financed a significant amount of these properties. In the end, the value of the short-term rentals, because of the condition at which they keep those properties, interior and exterior, do sell for a premium. So there is something to be considered with that. I guess I would say, Drew, that if I had my choice between the RE and all that being excluded or conditional permit, I'd say conditional versus excluding the RE, because where I'm at would be excluded, but yet right across the fairway is that same thing. And I'm in a small, tiny home. I'm in 1,700 square feet that was built as a second home or as a rental home. And I've had the unfortunate problem of living next to some folks, not here, got great neighbors in River Hill, that were not good long-term renters. I would rather have short-term renters all day long than long-term renters. So thank you.
All right. We're going to close the public hearing at 6:42. I have a couple questions. Kevin, you want to start? Comment, questions before we look at this? You have any ideas about amending it, or?
Well, I think that just with our town hall meetings and everything else, I mean, there's something to be said of, you know, we've got to put some parameters in this. You know, I do like the CUPs. It is very time consuming, but you know, it does give us an opportunity to hear both sides. I think from my stance on it, the licensing inspections, I think that's needed for sure, and a good policy for both sides. I would say that the RE, R1, R2s being excluded, I think in my view is not necessary. And maybe it is a radius on those and not the others, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Jeff?
I'll mirror what Kevin said on some of the licensing and inspections. We've talked about that. We've kind of beat that horse as a commission. Definitely something that should happen, needs to happen. Periodic inspections by the city to go out to make sure that they haven't turned a 2-bedroom house into 8 bedrooms, or so to say. A lot of talk about Frisco or about Arlington, and reading through this, there are some great things, but there's also some limitations in there that I, as a property owner, I'm going to quote whoever, Russell a while ago, I'll call my lawyer. Because if you tell me I can't close my garage in and make it a bedroom or a man cave, we're gonna have an issue. So you gotta take everything with a grain of salt, look at everything. I do agree with what Kevin said as well. You know, R1A, yeah. Roy, I agree with what you stated as well. I know where you're at. I know what's across the street from you or across the fairway. I know what's right down the street from me on Oakland Hills. There's 2 short-term rentals down there. I think that might, Mr. Chairman, be something we need to look at on an individual basis going forward, if that's what the council decides to do. But it's never had a problem out there, and we've never had issues that I know of, and that's about it.
Is there a possibility where we're restricting short-term rentals in some areas now, and we have someone grandfathered in? If that property is sold, can we restrict that short-term rental? Not let it transfer with the property?
No, the grandfathered use, whether it's through, predating 2019 code or a conditional use permit, would run with the land. If they cease to use it for a certain time period, then the grandfathered use would go away, but we could not preempt that.
David? First and foremost, I think what the staff has put together is super, and I'm for it. Can't see anything else.
Well, my concern might be the radius of the 250 foot. That's the only thing I may have an issue with.
I've got a few questions. Under this plan, these amendments, would there be, if we're looking at a short-term rental in the R1A or RT zones, is there any sort of notification process that has to go out for neighbors? Do they have to notify anybody?
We haven't gotten to that proposal. That would be part of the licensing.
Okay.
That has not been part of the discussion thus far. We've heard the comment in question, but we haven't made that determination.
Yeah. And I think a few of the other commissioners have mentioned it. Carrie mentioned it. The 250-foot radius, I think, might pose some potential issues just based upon if we're looking, from the back corner of that property and we're hitting, the front corner of another property that's not necessarily even in maybe the same neighborhood, technically. And that would be preventative there. Is there a specific reason why we looked at, I know we talked about a block face, a percentage of a certain block face. Is there a reason why we are proposing 250-foot radius versus a percentage of a block face?
Obviously, that was recommended as a way to protect the neighborhood from that saturation. We had several comments about a single property owner having short-term rental on either side or across the street. So it would prevent that from being directly across the street or behind them and one next door and starting to get kind of surrounded.
Okay.
So it was intended to be a distance protection in all directions, not just the block face.
Okay.
And that was kind of the concerns we had with the percentage of block face and some of the comments we did receive, that though you may limit the block face to 1 or 2, there could also be one across the street and one behind the same property owner.
And another question I had, sorry, I just want to try and be as thorough as possible, just given the magnitude of what we're deciding here. For each zoning type, and we don't have to go through each of them, but R1, for instance, or RE, what percentage do we know of the total STR pool, or how many STRs even operate in a R1 district or a RE? Do we know that figure? Because I would assume a large majority is going to be in this cluster already.
So the existing ones that we have in our system, there are none in RE, the residential estate.
Okay.
Roughly 30 in R1A and R1, 28 to 30 in both of those districts.
Okay.
Mixed use downtown and RT, I think total 15 to 20 total. So the bulk of it is in the R1A and the R1, and about an equal split.
Well, like what the other commissioners have mentioned, and several attendees here have mentioned, great work on this. I think my opinion is this is a great proposal. The only thing I might want to see is for property owners in a R1 or RE to still have the methods in place to come and propose that they could do a short-term rental, and we look at it at that point in time and still look at those on a case-by-case basis. But if it falls within these zoning districts, then I think we should try and make it more feasible and less of a cumbersome process for all of us.
I think the purpose of what, and I agree, staff has done a tremendous job. I love the proposal you come up with, and I understand what you're saying, but the CUP process doesn't work because there's no rules to whether or not you approve or disapprove a CUP in an R1 or an RE or whatever it is. That's our problem. Limiting this to specific zoning classifications, I think, is the perfect solution where there is no, we can't have it by right in the zoning classification and then still retain the CUP process. There really is no reason for the conditional use permit process if it's allowed by right. And that is the problem we have now. We have a conditional use permit process for zoning classifications, but we really don't have, it's all subjective. My thinking on this is if there's 3 houses on a street that have a short-term rental, I'm not going to approve a short-term rental, but that's not a rule. That's me. So my opinion is, I agree with you. I think the 250-foot distance needs to be kind of, I don't know how we do this. I agree with you that up and down the block, I think 250 feet is okay. I don't think if I live on this street and the street behind me, because they're within 250 feet of me, I think you really eliminate, especially if you're going to go to an R1A classification where you allow, that's going to be quite a few of them where you allow, you're eliminating you could be eliminating 3 blocks because my house is here 250 feet behind me. So I would suggest that we look at the horizontal distances on the block, and maybe if there's a short-term rental right here, maybe it's 200 feet this way and 200 feet this way, but not behind me. I'm not even sure across the street. Although I understand, I think that's where we need to do a little bit more thinking. I'm totally in favor of the way you've set this up. I know the permitting process is going to be good. I'm really in favor of eliminating RE, R1, and R2 from this condition, from this short-term rental process. I understand what Chuck said about you're giving up, but you're really not, because if it's allowed by right, you don't need a conditional use permit. And if it's not allowed by right, you don't need a conditional use permit. So with the exception of really looking a little further at how you, at 200, 250 feet, I'm not adverse to something like that. I think you protect the reason to do that is so, like on Starkey Street, you don't have 5, short-term rentals next door to each other. I don't know how you do it, but I really don't think, if my house is right here, that there's a 250-foot radius all around my house where you can't have a short-term rental. I think that's a hardship. If you're going to allow it in R1A, I think it's a hardship because, I think maybe with the other classifications, the RT and the downtown and everything, R1A may be a target, and you may have to, figure out a way to use a radius that is not eliminating 2 or 3 blocks. Because I think it's what I may be wrong, but I think that's what you're doing.
And so initially, we did look at the percentage of block face, so there would just be a number of units on one block.
Well, I like that, but I mean, again, you could use the percentage of block face, because you have 5 in a row then.
It depends on the percentage. So,
Right.
but you
I
can
mean,
still
if you have, if the block face is 20 houses, you're allowed 10% or whatever, 20, whatever it is, they could all be 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row, which I'm not sure is the greatest thing to do, but.
Right.
Which
And
they
that
could
was-
already do that though in the other zoning districts.
Sure they can, but that's what we're trying to get away from. We're trying to fix the problem. We're trying to get away from the conditional use permit process, and we're trying to, and I applaud what you guys did. I think you've come up with a great idea with a little,
kind of go back to the percentage, looking at that to try to limit it just to the block face. One of the concerns that was brought up was if a block was allowed 2 units per block face, you could have a homeowner with a short-term rental on both sides would still meet a percentage.
No, I like the
and
buffer.
behind it and back in front of them across the street, completely surrounded. A distance on the block face instead of a percentage would obviously solve that or prevent that a little more. But then you could still have one in front of and behind. That's why we suggested the radius. If 250 feet is too large, obviously most of your lots are narrower and deeper. So 50 foot by 100 is kind of your typical lot. So you would be eliminating 5 in either direction and then 1 or 2 block faces to the front and rear.
Would this affect any river properties like Arcadia Loop, where I feel like everyone should be allowed? Is that river like Arcadia Loop? I feel like everyone should have access, and anyone on rivers.
Right. Arcadia Loop is R2, so it would be prohibited in the future with this proposal. I mean, there are other mechanisms. The overlay district that was brought up could be another mechanism to look at in the future. It's not something we've had enough time to really dig into currently, but trying to keep this moving as quick as we could.
Correct.
And again, responsive to the workshop and the town hall comments, that's just kind of where we landed was with that reduced buffer, but still a buffer to keep the saturation from a particular neighborhood from having that impact. So we could look at kind of a GIS. Could you do an oval?
So I think a lot of what you get with when we're looking through all these and we're looking through all these other cities, right? And when we talk to our attorneys prior to us doing this, they always tell us try to figure out the way that's going to be the least impactful on us. From a are we being as equitable as we can be in our interpretation, right? The rationale for us all being here and the challenges that y'all and the council have faced is that a lot of people feel that CUP process has been fairly arbitrary, right? So when you have the zoning classification portion of it, outright, allowing it or disallowing it in these certain cases, right? That makes it a little cleaner. A buffer is something that you see in a lot of other areas of zoning classifications, whether or not it's alcohol-related businesses, sexually oriented related businesses. That is a typical standard that you see, right? The block face is a little bit more challenging, right? Because you have a block face of 6 houses, 8 houses, 12 houses, 13 houses. You start to get into, okay, well, is it 12.5%, 12.75%? Well, I'm right here, I'm right there. The buffer is more of a concise way to look at that.
I like the buffer.
Right. But that distance is, it's a measure of, let me see if Martin can pull it up. Keep talking.
Yeah.
We're going to see if we can get Martin to pull up the old buffer map that we've got based on the current STRs that we have in the R1A. Y'all will be able to see what that 250-foot buffer looks like. And those can be that can be that distance can be differentiated, right? So your typical what R1A is 55 feet is a block face, I think. 50 feet. So 250 feet is 5 houses away. Right.
Well, I understand it this way. It's this way that
It's about, right, so your typical lot face is 110 feet. So it's a distance, right? So you're going that 110 feet plus your street plus the
Right.
next 110 feet. So you're kind of moving through that block behind you. I see what you're saying. I mean, we understand it, right? And there's no silver bullet to this.
No,
For
no,
sure.
I agree. I mean, I think what you guys have come up with, to me, I like it.
But we are all for some recommendations for y'all to help guide us through this to the next part for council.
I mean, I think the one thing we have to do is we have to eliminate the CUP. Or we have to have some very strict rules.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you can do that.
Chairman Searman,
Yes, sir.
I know I've already spoken on this, but I have a suggestion maybe.
Sure.
And my assistant city manager might shoot me down. So like we're
The
talking
public
about.
hearing is closed, so we can take suggestions.
Oh, okay, great. So we're talking about a buffer like in a circle. What about like an oval, like so it gets the block face, but it doesn't get the next street behind it? That's more of not a percentage. That's just a thought.
But is it possible, Mike, to have a buffer that's one way this way and one way this way, different number?
Like a rectangle, maybe?
In theory, it's all possible.
But you know, blocks are different, so I don't know that would work.
Well, they are. I mean, they're not straight. They're curved. They're this. They're that. And so we can certainly pull together a couple of different options for the council to review based on y'all's recommendation, right? To say that, you know, maybe suggesting that an outright circular buffer of X distance may not be the best way to approach it. You know, if that's the recommendation, we could take that back and staff could review a couple of different options to bring back to the council for R1A as a buffer to try and mitigate
That
some of
sounds
those.
like something you guys would be interested in.
Yeah.
I like what you said, Mike. It doesn't alleviate the street behind. It's looking at where we're at here with R1A. I mean, that whole Lowry, Hugo, that whole thing. We already know the situation with that area.
Is it possible for us to make a recommendation on what you've proposed, agreeing or approving everything with the exception of looking at a modification of the buffer?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Can we do that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, we brought staff proposal based on comments, discussions, knowing full well that y'all are going to have some variations on those things. So, absolutely. And council may agree. Council may.
Right, yeah.
So.
That's the great thing about it. Whatever we decide, council gets to make the final word.
They left you. It's all on you, Mike.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am, you can.
Is there a way to do a CUP in R1 and RE online?
No, ma'am, we don't want, we're trying to eliminate CUP because you can do CUPs, but there's no hard and fast rules for a CUP. You're gonna face what we face now. You have one feeling about them, the neighborhood has another feeling about them, and it's an emotional decision on the CUP. That's why we're trying to get to a point where we eliminate the CUP and have zoning classification. I mean, anything is possible, but we're not solving the problem. Doing a CUP online is not even, to me, not even feasible because there's no public input.
But like if you do, like when I'm doing like a project at my house, I do all that online and people can click in and see it.
Yeah, but you don't, you know, you're asking people to use a computer and a lot of people don't even have access to that. So you're eliminating a substantial part of the community from. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that's my opinion.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
What about where you have townhomes in their denser neighborhoods? Would that buffer be appropriate?
It depends on if they're in R1A, it's the same thing.
R1A does not allow townhomes.
Yeah, so you won't have. My recommendation, I don't know, I mean, I'm brainstorming here. Do we have, the proposal for the zoning. Is that something that everybody doesn't like, does like?
Mike, can you hold on for
Yeah,
a vote?
yeah.
No, keep talking, just hold on for a vote, because we lost the feed online. Check the line.
I mean, I know I heard some suggestions not wanting to eliminate R1. I would not be adverse to, if we can get the buffer right. Although I'm pretty much in favor of eliminating RE, R1, R2.
I'm one that said it, so I'll kind of hit on it. And Roy, using him as an example because I know where he's at and I know where. So he's R1, right across 90 yards away. He's got a whole slew of, you know, short-term rentals over there.
I know, but
And
that's the past.
It's a unique
we got to look at the future, though. I mean, I agree with you, but I think we got to look at not what we've done, because there's a lot of places that have short-term rentals that won't have short-term rentals anymore.
Right.
My
And there's-
opinion.
And there's a lot of places that have too many in one area,
Right.
in my opinion. So it's,
I mean, I do agree with the R1 having a buffer that's smaller, or you know, a buffer of some sort, like you mentioned.
We're good to go, Mike.
Okay, so this is the situation, in my opinion, we're in. You're not going to have any short-term rentals in residential estate areas, more than likely. R2, how many did you say we have in R2, Drew, more or less? How many?
Just a few.
Okay.
I would say R2, probably less than 10, roughly.
So really what we're talking about is R1 and R1A is really where we need to focus our attention. Would you say that's true?
Based on the current inventory, yes.
I mean, I would vote for this thing exactly the way it is with a modification for the buffer, but I'm one. So I think before, I'm just looking for some.
My suggestion is, and this is my feeling on it, is RE, R1, R2, RM should have some sort of a radius, R1A through the rest of them, or R1A could have a different type of radius, whether that's a rectangle or an oval or something down a block. Then R3, RT, and then the rest of them don't have any requirements. But I think us restricting some of those and letting others, I don't know. Even in residential estates, I mean, I think if we can help make the density less in some of those areas, that would help the neighborhoods and still allow those. But I think too in that R1A. 250-foot radius with a 50 by 100-foot lot. I mean, you're knocking out a bunch of that.
Right.
And I think they do serve I think short-term rentals do serve a great purpose with helping some of the growth in the town, helping us have more and better restaurants, helping us have different things that we can all appreciate. And me, I was born here. I'm fifth generation in this town, and it has never grown fast, and I don't think it's ever going to grow fast. We should, I would like for my kids to come back here and be raised, but we do need other things that I think short-term rentals will help promote. So,
my concern about all of these short-term rentals is, bottom line is the neighborhood, you can call it whatever you want, it's a business. It's a business, and I know the residential transitional areas allow businesses in there, but they have to have the look of the neighborhood, but you can't, I mean, I guess you can put a home-based business in any zoning classification, correct?
Yes, we do have a section specific to
But that's a home-based
occupations.
business that doesn't have third-party, residents.
Right. Most of them are more of a
Internet-based business.
internet-based business. Some do have customers coming to the home. So there are some services that would be
But
face-to-face.
They come and go.
Right.
Right.
And we do have specific supplementary requirements in the code for how those businesses operate. So it would be no different than having requirements for these.
Were we able to get that map that shows the buffer zones?
I can keep working on it, but I have not been able to yet.
I'm comfortable with the proposal that you made, eliminating R1, R2, and RE. And trying to kind of fine tune the buffer zone. But I guess what we need is a recommendation on what staff has presented. So we can move forward and put this back in their hands and let them fine tune it.
Motion to approve, subject to radius.
Okay, we have a motion to approve what staff has presented, subject to a tweaking of the buffer zone radius. We have a second.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve what's been presented. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, it passes. So what we would like for you to do is come back to us.
What happens now? This is gonna go to city council?
City council on.
Well, no. We recommend you coming back to us with a modification of the buffer zone.
So this is, you guys are recommending to the city council.
That's what we're doing?
That's what you're doing.
Okay, so what we've recommended goes to city council. If they approve, you will come back with trying to fine tune the buffer zone.
We're between now and going to the city council.
Right.
We'll work on options that give them some different buffering
Okay.
cases for R1A. And with the recommendation that RE, R1, R2, and RM would be disallowed, and it be allowed by right in R3, RT, DAC, and the mixed use district. That's what I understood.
Okay, that's what we did.
Okay.
So, staff report.
Next meeting,
He's okay.
September 8th. No, excuse me, September 1st.
Anybody have anything else? Appreciate the time, effort, and thought, guys.
I will say and reiterate, because I didn't do it, but thank you guys. Y'all,
Did a good job.
Yeah.
it's the amount of time that y'all spend, I don't know if the citizens know what's been done. So.
So what we're trying to do is make the best of the situation and have no perfect answers.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and you may be right, what we may find that people that live in R1A zone